Good afternoon all. Arlene Lewis, good afternoon to you. Hi Rookman and Niles, good afternoon. Ricardo, Harry, good afternoon to you, sir. PF Cutters, Alison Rogers, Janelle Korea, is it? Good afternoon to you. And Diane Charles, hi Diane. Right. G Dimple 66. Leonard Bean, good afternoon. Christopher Coffey, Joycelyn Ragunath Singh, good afternoon. Right, so I'm jumping on for this a little bit today, folks, because as you know, today is Pan Semis, was sometimes you say Pan Day, and I know a lot of my listeners are probably Pan supporters, and some of you are maybe down at the Savannah, so maybe looking to head down to the Savannah. Those of you who might be taking it in at home, I have a nice little line. So I have one steel man in my constituency, which is Arima Angel Harps. Yes, it's Arima, but they fall within the constituency boundaries of Malabar Mausika. So I have the pleasure of being their member of parliament, and I visited the Panyard last night for their rehearsal, and I must say I was extremely impressed with what I heard. I believe they placed third in the preliminaries in their category, and so they are looking to have a better showing today. I think this is the best they've done in a very, very long time. And the band actually comprised a lot of young people, which stood out. Most of the players are probably teenagers or young persons in their early 20s. And as I was speaking to the manager last night, he indicated to me, they could have imported persons to come and play in the band, crack shots and so on, as he called them, but he said he prefers to give the young people a chance and to grow with them. And I assured them of my support. Right, so I want to go and give them that support today. Val Bowen, hi Val. Claire Irish, Andrea Gaskin, Alicia Isaac, Kurt Dalzin, good afternoon. Desh Rubin, hi Desh. Heather Lee, Wazid, Beverly Jones, hi. Joan Austin, Denise VN, TUZ, Marlon McAllister, Wayne Pedro. So let me jump into it one time. Let me start with a little bit of hypocrisy, as I call it, right? From one Surudratan Rambachan. Right, let me see if I get it here. To run a country, a government needs money. What does it do when the money is the problem? When money is the problem and the people don't have patience, no empathy, no understanding. When, or rather, what do you do as a result of the inheritance you receive from the PNM? A stark reality, right? So that's King Hypocrite, former Minister of Works and Infrastructure, Surudratan Rambachan. Where was Mr. Rambachan for the last 10 years when the PNM had challenges and issues with money? When they came in 2015, what did they inherit from the People's Partnership? Just a brief reminder, because the Foley Dunts, who support the UNC, and I read some comments over the last couple of days, where they're talking about when Kamala Persad-Bissessar left office in 2015, she left 12 billion and 15 billion in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Utter rubbish. Garbage. Don't know where they get these figures from. But then again, the leadership of their party loves to peddle a set of bogus figures. So we're not surprised, right? But they're talking had 15 billion in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and the country's reserves was X amount of billion. I don't understand how the supporters of the United National Congress don't understand that the country's foreign reserves and the Heritage and Stabilization Fund was not meant to meet the day-to-day operational expenses of the state, of the government, all right? Those are supposed to be buffers. We have what is called the Consolidated Fund, which is where the bulk of the government's money goes into. Right? We have the Exchequer account. And I would remind persons, based on what the Auditor General's report of 2015 said, when we do a comparative between the Auditor General's report of 2015 and the Auditor General's report of 2010, yes, for the benefit of the fully dunce, the Auditor General's report existed before 2023. Okay? You know, before 2023, before 2024, because it seems so many of them that is when they first discovered something called an Auditor General's report, and that is when they first discovered that there was a department called the Auditor General's Department, and a public servant with the title Auditor General. When this nonsense about 2.6 billion missing and Imbo thief and Rowley thief and who thief. But prior to that, they didn't know about this thing called the Auditor General's report, which shows, and I've spoken about this on numerous occasions, that in 2010, when the People's Partnership came into office, all right, the balance on the Exchequer account, or the overdraft on the Exchequer account, was just about 10 billion. 10 billion in overdraft. And when one looks at the expenditure, well, 2009 into 2010, and when one looks at the expenditure patterns of the People's National Movement under Mr. Manning, up until May of 2010, when the election was called, based on a projection, based on what the budgeted expenditure was for that year, we would see that had the PNM remained in office, it is quite likely that that deficit of 8 billion, or 10 billion, sorry, would have gone down probably to maybe about 7 or 8, thereabouts. It was headed along that path. And then we had the UNC come into office in May, and they were in office from let's say the end of May, June, July, August, September, 4 months into the financial year, the last 4 months of the financial year, and wreaked havoc, went on a spending spree for those 4 months, right? When they left office in 2015, the overdraft on the Exchequer account had gone from 10 billion to 33 billion. $33 billion in overdraft, permanent overdraft. And I spoke about that on numerous occasions since 2018 and after, when I was still on that radio station. At a time between 2010 to 2015, when they were boasting they had the highest energy revenues in the country's history, Kamla Persad-Bissessar said so the day after. Dr. Rowley in 2019, I believe it was, when he had his Mind Your Business segment over 2 days, where he was explaining to the country what they met in 2015, what they had to grapple with, energy prices, and so on. The following day, Kamla Persad-Bissessar held a press conference to address Dr. Rowley's statements, and she admitted that they had the highest energy revenues in the country's history. She said that. But yet still, with the highest energy revenues in the country's history for the 5-year period 2010 to 2015, you all took the overdraft from 10 billion to 33 billion, which means they spent an additional $23 billion, separate and apart from all the revenues that they would have gotten from oil and gas in that period. They've spent a further $23 billion. On what? And I have always made the case. Patrick Manning built Napa, he built SAPA, he built the government campus in Port of Spain, all right? Renovated 5 of the magnificent, they started the process of the renovation and so on. They rebuilt the Prime Minister's residence. He gave us the Chancery Lane administrative complex that Kamla Persad-Bissessar took and converted into the teaching hospital. They built thousands of houses. They introduced GATE. Millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on GATE. All of these different things Mr. Manning did. And yet still, the overdraft didn't go to 33 billion. Right? So it means if she said they had the highest energy revenues in the country, so she means she earned more energy revenue than Mr. Manning. But yet still he was able to build all of these things. Establish UTT. Right? So many things. And yet still, they took the overdraft to just 10 billion. Kamla Persad-Bissessar didn't build 1/3, not 1/4, probably not even 1/10 of what it is Patrick Manning built. And what she did build, they built it based on borrowed money from the Chinese. And all of these loans, payments for all of these loans started when? In 2018, under Keith Rowley. and the People's National Movement. So they didn't even start to spend money on loan payments yet. What was all of that money spent on? Yeah? But Rambachan wants to come and talk a pack of fluff about, let me get it here again. Just hypocrite. All right, let me get it here. To run a country, a government needs money. What does it do when money is the problem and the people don't have patience, no empathy, no understanding? You all encourage that from 2015 to 2025, Mr. Rambachan. When Keith Rowley was telling you all this is the situation, when oil prices went at one point in time to less than $1, it was in minus territory. Remember that? That when the PNM came back in 2015, 2016, thereabouts, and oil prices had dropped around $20-something per barrel, they didn't have the benefit of $100 plus that Kamala Persad-Bissessar would have enjoyed for the majority of her tenure as Prime Minister. They didn't have to deal with COVID, a pandemic, to find money to pay salary relief grant, income support grant, rental assistance grant, to put out money to assist with people with food, right? All of the millions that were given to the ecclesiastical bodies and monies that were spent by the state for food boxes and so on to assist persons. All of that. Persad-Bissessar didn't have all of that. But Rambachan didn't know then that you need money to govern a country. Because just remember, when the government would have read the budget in 2019, September, October 2019, they did not budget for a pandemic and all of the expenses that would have come with that. So they had to find money to meet those expenses. He didn't know about that. And with an economy that was shut down for months, and therefore commercial activity was impeded, so income was not being generated, so it would have affected the government's non-oil revenue position, taxes, the businesses not operating, not functioning, they're not earning money, so therefore there is no profits to be had, or the amount of profits that they would have gotten would be significantly less, and therefore the tax revenue that the government would have anticipated to get from these businesses that were shut down during COVID, they did not get. But Rambachan didn't know about that then. Didn't know that then. But all of these hypocrites who coming out of their holes to come and talk rubbish, and what, as a result of the inheritance that you receive from the PNM, well, I am certain the financial position that they would have inherited from the PNM was a little better than what it is the PNM would have inherited from them in 2015. So while, and even in that same press conference that I mentioned earlier, that Persad-Bissessar held after Dr. Rowley had his Mind Your Business session, right? She too spoke about, well, we left money in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund and we left money in the country's foreign reserve. Those were the two entities that she made mention of. She could not speak to the Exchequer account because, as I said, they took it to 33 billion in permanent overdraft. For that to come out of overdraft, the government has to earn enough income in a year or a couple of years to be able to clear that 33 billion and then come back into the red. Well, the black, sorry. That ain't going to happen anytime soon. No way. They put us there. And let us not forget that the first person to sound the alarm on that was former independent senator. And these days, it's a curse to be called an independent senator. Yeah? Could get yourself in problems with the fully dones. When, before a joint select committee, he raised the question and he asked, 33 billion in overdraft? How did that happen? How did we get here? Independent Senator Danisha Mahare, who's an economist who I think was in charge of the economics department at one point in time up at UE, he asked the question, he sounded the alarm, and Mr. But at the time, he asked the wrong person, he had asked the last administration. They put it there, not us. We left it at 10 in 2010. They came in and in 5 years took it from 10 to 33. So I asked them. No answers were forthcoming. Rambachan was part of that administration. So when he wants to talk about inheritance and what inheritance the PNM left, so you need to go back 10 years prior and look at the inheritance that the government of which you were a part left for the PNM, what they had to work with, what they had to navigate for 10 years, which would have impacted on the inheritance that they would have left the UNC. Because you see, it didn't just start in 2010. While some people who want to believe that prior to 2010, Trinidad and Tobago didn't exist, it suddenly came came into existence the post 24th of May 2010. But they have no discussion about that. And all of these armchair critics who have plenty to say, I know the last administration did this and the last administration did, and you need to exercise patience and empathy and understanding. Well, Posad Bisesa and her band of merry misfits should not have made the promises that they made to the population to get their votes on the 28th of April. That is why they find themselves in the situation that they are in. Because when Keith Rowley and his administration was saying, tighten your belt. We have 2 rough years, but come 2027, when we expect natural gas to start to flow, hopefully from Dragon Gas and Lauren Manatee, Coquina Mannequin, and all of these other fields, and our situation is going to improve. The country's financial circumstance is going to be a little better, and therefore the government is going to have the fiscal space to be able to do more, and the country could breathe a sigh of relief. But we're just asking you all for what? Patience. The same thing he's talking about here. Empathy, understanding. Right? He didn't know to come and encourage the population then to put out posts like this, have a little patience now. Government trying the best to do what they can to be able to improve our circumstance, not just for a couple of years, but for 20 to 30 years down the road. He didn't know about that. But all of a sudden now, his government getting cussed left, right, and center, the government that he supports. And when he wants to come out now to talk about people need to have patience and empathy and understanding. Really? Where is the patience and empathy and understanding from your government, Mr. Rambuchan, with respect to these hefty fines? Where is the understanding when people don't have money? They can't have a little defect and they don't have the money to fix it because the government that you support took away their job. Or thanks to the policies of the government that you support, the business that they work for has now gone out of business and they have lost their jobs. So where is the patience and understanding for the government? Why didn't they come and say, well, here's what? We realize there's a level of lawlessness on the road, which we didn't know about before because we fully dunce, right? Either that or we just, anyway. And we are going to give you a 3-month moratorium to get your house in order. Okay? Your car have issues and it needs to be fixed. We will be cracking down from the 1st of April. So you have until then to get your house in order, fix your car, whatever, right? No. You announced on the 25th of December, hefty new fines, 100% increase, effective January 1st. And we couldn't care. And we didn't announce it, right? We just put it in the Gazette. And thanks to the diligence of PNM MPs who saw it and brought it to the public's attention that you are now aware. But you would have been caught off guard, like a thief in the night, come the 1st of January, when you're on your way to the beach or you're heading to some family member's home for New Year's Day line and you got caught up in a roadblock and pressure. Your car not inspected. It's working good, but you just don't have an inspection sticker. Pressure, fine in your waist, and you weren't aware. Your license expired 2 days, 3 days ago. And they said, well, I will head out on the 2nd of January and I will deal with it. Fine in your waist. And you will pay late fee. All of a sudden, no grace period, no patience, no understanding, no empathy for the citizens. But Rambuchan wants you, the citizens, to have patience and empathy and understanding for this oppressive and wicked government. He goes again. We shall float or sink together. Time to heal. Somewhere along the line, the continuation of widespread subsidies had to be addressed. There they said, somewhere along the line, the continuation of widespread subsidies had to be addressed. No country can sustain such a level of subsidies. A country has to earn in excess to support that level of subsidies. Sooner or later, electricity and water will probably rise. The rise in alcohol taxes, traffic fines, natural gas prices to manufacturers are just short-term measures aimed at transitioning to the real cost of supplying these services. All of these changes cry out for a new economic model and a fast-tracked approach to diversifying the economic base. Can it be done? Yes. But the political will and the mobilization of the national mind to see reality is absolutely necessary. Inspired leadership, confidence building, constructing a partnership between the government and the people is a necessary must now. Reducing animosity and realizing that we will float or sink together is the self-realization that the nation requires. Look for opportunities in the current situation and not accept defeat. time to heal. Somewhere along the line, the continuation of widespread subsidies had to be addressed. No country can sustain such a level of subsidies. And Suruj Ratan, hypocrite Rambachan, only came to this realization suddenly in 2026. But when it is that the PNM under the last administration was pointing that out for the last 10 years, apparently it didn't resonate with Mr. Rambachan. He didn't process it, right? Because when this same discussion was being had by the last administration and they were trying to sensitize the population as he's now calling for, they were saying that it was oppression, wickedness, evil on the part of the PNM. They don't care about poor people. All they care about is the 1% and only oppressing the poor. Poor people suffering, they're eating grass, can't afford to pay the bills, send the children to school, put food on the table because Rowley and Imbert wicked. When Imbert removed the fuel subsidy, the same fuel subsidy talking about here, right? When Imbert sought to reduce it, and as a result, he increased the price of fuel once. So we weren't discussing it from the perspective of we reducing the subsidy. No, Imbert increased the price of fuel. Not that he reduced the subsidy and you asking you to pay more so that the money that the government would have saved on that reduced subsidy could now be used to do other things that you want them to do, to pave road, to build schools, to fix the hospitals, to buy medication, to provide jobs, all of these things. They gave you an option. We could spend the money on subsidies or we could spend it on these other things. All right? In 2013, when the man who was the Minister of Finance under the same administration of which Mr. Rambachan was a member, when he was Minister of Works and Infrastructure, one Larry Hawaii, who was paid $11.625 million to leave his nice cushy job as CEO of First Citizens Bank to become the Minister of Finance. Nobody forced him to. Only government ever to buy a man to become a minister. When people tripping over themselves just to get a little state board work, far more to become a minister. But this man, all they had to pay him $11.625 million. Million, as the bald-headed Douglas would say. All right? But as Rowley and the PNM wants to make the rich richer. Today, that same $11.625 million man sits in the chair of the central bank governor, earning over $175,000 a month. So as if he wasn't rich enough before, it will make him even richer. At a time when he should be home, put up his foot on his recliner, watch some cricket, spend some time with his grandchildren and so on. No. Instead of get rid of Hele and bring Mr. Man, put him there, because you all needed a lackey to do what it is you all wanted to do. I mean, we come into that just now. But when in 2013, as Minister of Finance, he sounded the alarm and he said it. He said it. Budget deficits have become a normal part of the country's financial lexicon. And to fix that, there's two things we need to do urgently. Reduce these fuel subsidies and introduce property tax. Two things, he said. He, $11.625 million man, said that. Right? The Foley Duns didn't chastise him then. And what did he do? He started the process. Increased the price of premium from $4 to $5.75 one shot. No grease, umbrella, pay K-packs. He didn't do like Imbert and give you a little piece in increments. Take 50 cents, take 50 cents, take 75 cents. No, he didn't do that. He said take the full 175, one shot. Don't want to hear nothing from it. All the while enjoying the perks of minister. Right? So you get $11.625 million and then earning a salary of $60,000 a month as minister and all the other perks that come with it. But Rowley and the PNM wanted to make the rich richer. Where was Rambachan then? This was your cabinet colleague. When he announced in the 2013 budget that they were going to reintroduce property tax. They would start with industrial, commercial, and they would go down to agriculture, and then they would head to residential over a 5-year period, a 4 to 5 year period. Two things he said to remove budget deficit. Once we do that, we could balance the budget. No more deficits. So that we can start to come out of this 33 billion or avoid heading to because they were heading to the 33 billion overdraft figure then. So maybe if they had taken his advice in 2013, they might not end up at 33. Perhaps they might have ended at 18, which is still a little manageable. But no, 2 weeks later, he come back and say, what? Well, after consultations with the business community, not the average citizen, the business community, he has decided that now is not the best time to implement property tax. I thank God the the rich stepped in and told him, hey, don't come here with that rubbish. Not you, not the poor man, not the working class. The rich, the business sector stepped in, had a conversation with him, and he pulled it back. And what was the end result of that? Ask a silly question. 33 billion in permanent overdraft. But today, Mr. Rambachan wants to come and tell us rubbish, nonsense. But the subsidies couldn't continue for much longer. And he just sounded the alarm. He tell you, water and electricity rates may very well follow. Rambachan said that. It's in PNM, not PNM saying this. When the PNM spoke about, when the RIC, at the request of TNTech, proposed a rate increase, and they had their consultation, we had people dragging coffin, meeting after meeting, dragging coffin with picture of the then president and the prime minister and members of government in it, all over the country, dragging coffin, and Kamala was there hand in hand. She, Jolene, and Victor Roberts, who has now turned against them. But all of them was hand in hand, walking, dragging coffin, happy. Brought out the people in numbers to every consultation to cost the government, and what that, and the increase in rate, and the wicked, and but now, Rambachan wants to come and tell you that is an inevitable. Right? Let me get it here again. No country can sustain such a level of subsidies. In other words, no country can sustain such a level of subsidies when the UNC in power. But when the PNM in power, oh yes, it can be sustained. And any attempt by a PNM government to reduce those subsidies must be considered, characterized as oppression, wickedness. When UNC does it, that is good governance. That is strong leadership, inspired leadership, confidence building, construction of a partnership between the government and the people. That is how we define it when the UNC is in power. There's not oppression. There's not digging out the eyes of the poor people. Country has to earn in excess to support that level of subsidies. Sooner or later, electricity and water rates will probably rise. And he has no problem with that happening, because this is the UNC trying to fix years of wastage. Unnecessary subsidies. Telling you, brace yourself. In fact, I saw a video a couple of weeks ago where Mr. Padarath was speaking at a pundit's house, some religious event they had at the pundit's house, and they gave him the opportunity to speak. And of course, using a religious event to engage in politics, encouraging the people to support Kamala Persad-Bissessar. And he mentioned, things are likely to get worse. There are going to be other tough decisions that you may not like, that you may not be pleased with, but it is necessary. But when the PNM was in power, it wasn't necessary. No, that was just the PNM being wicked and evil and greedy and oppressive. Me and them hypocrites, I could listen to them. Never happened. Bunch of hypocrites. That's all they are. So the state of emergency came to an end yesterday. All right. And all the 117 persons who were detained under that state of emergency have been released, including Ms. Olive Green Jack, who was detained for 81 days because she dared to make mention of, to criticize the Honorable Prime Minister, and to just engage in, I'll go and chop it up. Put up a picture of the Prime Minister's residence and said, tell Maduro to strike there and so on. And we saw what the outcome of that was. She indicated that she received a phone call instructing her to take down the video, which she did. And subsequent to that, some men came and they took her under detention order signed by dictator number 2, Roger Alexander. And she was detained, and she spent the last 81 days in the women's prison. And she's finally back home with her family. I trust that her stay at the pleasure of the state did not further impair her health situation, because as I understand, she has kidney issues. She's a kidney patient, and her situation was so dire that she actually had to stop working because of it. So I hope that it did not worsen her situation, but she's now back home. She has offered an unreserved apology to the Prime Minister, and I suppose she has learned her lesson, because under this administration, that is how you teach people a lesson, right? So she was in jail up to Friday. She came out of jail yesterday, What difference would it have made? Why couldn't you all have let her go before? What she said was so terrible and so egregious that she deserved to stay in prison for 81 days. That while Mrs. Prasad Bisesa and Raja Alexander and other members of the government were enjoying Christmas Day with their families, enjoyed bringing in the New Year with their families, where was Miss Green Jack? She didn't have that privilege. She was behind bars for 81 days simply because she said something that offended the government and they wanted to make an example of her. She could never get back those 81 days that she lost with her family. Never get it back. This is the loving, caring, benevolent government. Half of me belongs to you, the other half I give to you. You know that line? There have been prime ministers before me, prime ministers after me, but none will love you as much as I love you. And that is how she will show the love. That's how she shows the love. She's queen, mother of the nation, for them, not me. Right? Today makes it exactly 9 months since Kamala Prasad Bisesa became Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Right? She took her oath on the 1st of May, 2025. So 9 months today. The bad news, you still have 4 years and 6 months. Because they're taking it right down to the wire, as they did last time. 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days. All right? So you still have 4.5 years to go. 9 months in, where are we? Where are we as a country? Has your situation improved? How many of you all have won? When UNC wins, what's supposed to happen? Any of you all winning yet? Other than the ministers of government who went from earning just salaries as the salary they said they didn't want, by the way, right? Went from earning salaries as members of parliament, so now they're earning salaries as member of parliament, and they're earning salaries as government ministers, and all of the attendant perks that come with it. They win. A set of misfits who you didn't vote for. In fact, who you voted against, the likes of Philip Edward Alexander, right? Consummate parasite. Just latch on at the right time and he get through. Making over 70 grand a month. Doing what? A yapper, a UNC mouthpiece. All of a sudden, he's Kamala Prasad Bisesa's #1 defender. If you only look or appear to look at Kamala Prasad Bisesa too hard, he is there to put you in your place, to call you out, because he needs to earn that money. Right? He don't plan to go anywhere anytime soon. And he knows if the last term Mrs. Prasad Bisesa had as a prime minister is anything to go by, that as a senator, you ain't safe. You're there today and tomorrow you're going to replace you with somebody else. So he's doing everything he can, but he should learn from Jayanti Lakshmi Ramdiyal, who seems to have disappeared like dust in the wind. During the last session of parliament, as senator, every opportunity Jayanti got to sing Kamala's praises and to audition to show, well, look, leader, here am I. Notice me. Poor thing. Filed nomination papers to be screened for 2 seats and get 1. And you had to pay $2,000 with them, not with the PNM. You just submit your nomination papers and you're allowed to appear before the screening committee. With them, you had to pay $2,000 for every seat that you wanted to be screened for. So poor thing spent her $4,000. And what happened? Where is she today? Not even in the Senate, not a board position, nothing. All that set of performance that you put down in the Senate. You beat the PNM with this the administration only talking about bail, and they figure it's to lock up people and they want to deny people bail, and that's their crime fighting plan, is to just to lock up people. Where government came with last week Friday? Where are you, Jayanti? Where are you? You're still there? You disappeared just like that. We thought for sure he would have given you something, anything. A certain no name, unknown entities nobody even hear about before, come out of nowhere, and they make them ministers, cabinet ministers, senators, and put them in the cabinet. And you who labored so hard in the vineyard for years, Jayanti, you ain't get anything. Nothing. No mention of your name. Right? When question was put to Prasad Bisesa about you, when they realized the cabinet was sworn in and they hear your name, well, you know, there's still opportunities, things to get. 9 months in. Well, they still have board positions to fill. They still have ambassador positions to fill. So keep hope alive. You might get something. All is not yet lost. Maybe some of the senators might get Mrs. Posabi-Sessa upset and she decide to get rid of them and give you a Kobo sweat. Right? So don't worry. Meanwhile, over the last week, we've seen several business places closing their doors. Businesses that would have survived the COVID period, that would have survived 2 shutdowns of the economy during COVID, and yet still they were able to survive. But as soon as Hurricane UNC passed through, that's it. And this is a continuing trend that we've been seeing over the last couple of months. Businesses closing, right, all over the country. So we saw on several bars, we saw a list circulating on social media. I think it was reported in one of the newspapers yesterday, some 30 bars that were reported closed. The media house would have done some checking, fact checking. I would have called some of the business places, the bars and so on that were mentioned in that list, and they were able to confirm that somewhere around maybe about at least 75 to 80% of the names listed there, closure was in fact correct. There were a couple that said no, they're not closed, or they're just in the process of relocating bigger and better. But the majority of them have closed. Even in my own constituency of Malaba Mausika, we have seen the closure of Scotchies and other businesses. Restaurants on Mukurapo Road, I think is Rib Shack, which has been there for the last 10 years, shut down. Caldero's in San Fernando, Leon Caldero, from Cantaro with his Quattro, yes, the Suka Parang, Leon Caldero was running a thriving food business in San Fernando. I saw yesterday, post came out that they will be closing their doors after how many years and so on. And I wonder, what did the Fully Dones expect? And when you fire tens of thousands of people in less than 9 months, 50, 60, 70,000 people. I know it's interesting. In the debate last week, a week before, when Kareem brought that motion, and while it is speakers for the government would have denied that tens of thousands of persons have lost their jobs. You know what was interesting? They were not able to quote exact figures, because we know thousands lost their job. At least 11,000 people lost their job under CPEP. URP, another few thousand. Forestry, again, about another 4,000. Then persons who have lost their jobs at HDC, persons who would have lost their jobs in various ministries whose contracts were not renewed. And like so we know at least 25 to 30,000 persons have lost their jobs. And the government seems to be very gun-shy to quote the exact figure. If you're saying the PNM's figure of 50, 60, 70,000 is an exaggeration, tell us the exact figure. But they know it's in the tens of thousands still, and they don't want to admit it. So they will come and dance you all up and down the place and come and talk about the last administration and Foster Cummins and who get contract. No, let us deal. The population already dealt with that. The population deliberated on that, and they rendered a verdict on April 28th. Of course, subsequent to that, information has now come to hand that the prosecution's main witnesses would have perjured themselves. They lied to the members of the jury. You, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, lied to by the prosecution's witnesses. And you all rendered the wrong verdict. And now people calling for an appeal. No appeal here. You want it to go to the Privy Council? All who call in, we want a fresh election, I want back my vote. It have no appeal here. One and done. All right? You had to wait 5 years, well, 4.5, before you get a do-over. All who didn't go and vote are now sorry they didn't vote. All who was vexed with Rowley because he take 47%, which was really 28%, but he take 47%. And the very people who prosecuted that case and who told you, oh, we don't want the salary increase. We don't support it. The country cannot afford it at this time. So we say no to it. And as soon as they came into office in May, in less than 2 months, they came to the parliament in June, mid-year review, to allocate monies for the back pay. Back pay, which arose from the very same pay increase that they said they didn't want, that they didn't support, that Posabi-Sessa told you, well, I'm in opposition, I can't do nothing about it, and we cannot refuse. And, well, you are the prime minister now. Right? The same 87,000 that she was upset and that was so obscene to give Rowley. And she getting it now? She receiving the 87 plus 30,000 as member of parliament for Siparia. Almost $120,000 a month. She probably getting over $120,000 a month. Same 87. She was complaining about she collecting it now though. She happy to collect it. You think she care about all who suffering? Who are just earning $2,000 and $3,000 a month? You think that concerns her? At the end of the day, her bills paid. All of her bills paid. Money meeting money every month. The state providing her with vehicles, so she got to go there. Food, groceries, all the things. The state paying for all of them things. Entertainment, $10 million was allocated for entertainment under for the Prime Minister, Office of the Prime Minister. But they wanted to kill Rowley. $50 million they allocate for entertainment. How much of that Rowley spent? How much did he spend? When he explained to you the money, that money was allocated under a wrong heading, but nevertheless, it was attributed to the Office of the Prime Minister to pay outstanding arrears to UDCOT for all the buildings that fall under Office of the Prime Minister that UDCOT takes care of. The Magnificent Seven, well, those buildings that the state have responsibility for, and other buildings like the National Museum, the Magistrates Court in Port of Spain, all of these buildings that UDCOT handling. So when I heard Padarat, I think it was Padarat also talking on Friday, Paka rubbish about buildings were left in a state and all of that, and foolishness, and the judiciary and this government now is treating with that. The Port of Spain Magistrates Court was in a mess. That building was done over by the PNM. Talking about the San Fernando Court and this courtroom and that. The PNM, People's National Movement, when the parliament moved out of the waterfront building, where they were for the entirety of Kamala Persad-Bissessa's first term as Prime Minister, when they moved out of the waterfront, after the Keith Rowley administration would have finally renovated the Red House, which looks absolutely beautiful now, the space that was previously occupied by the Parliament was converted into the Waterfront Judicial Center, where 66 new courtrooms were established. 66. 34 new judges hired, in addition to the previous complement. PNM did that. All in an effort to improve the delivery of justice. PNM did that. So they hear this clown come Friday to talk a certain nonsense about the last administration wouldn't upkeep buildings. Rubbish. Now I see matters that were, well, appeal court matters that were taking place at the Waterfront Judicial Center. The judiciary has announced those matters will now come back to the Hall of Justice. All right? So they seem intent on going back to face-to-face court matters, where for years, on thanks to the PNM, we would have seen all of these trucks and these maxis with the bars on the window that were used to transport prisoners up and down from the jail to the court and back. You're driving down the road and then you see all of a sudden police car and all these trucks trying to run you off the road. All these amalgamated trucks and so on. Remember that? Those days? And it was done away with by the PNM when they introduced virtual courtrooms. So the prisoners could just come to a room in the prison and see the judge on a screen and whatnot. And after that, you go back. So there's no need to spend millions of dollars on prisoner transport. It seems they intend on going back to that. We're heading back there soon enough. But who want to make the rich richer? So all these businesses that continue to close down, right? Let me get some of them here. Right, Calderos, we are sorry to say goodbye. We are closing our doors for now. Thank you for your support. Calderos Grill and Stage, 104 to 106 Independence Avenue. Some of the bars, some of the other places that Chandu's and El Socorro, Fire Bar, Four Rose, Tamana, Red Ants Bar, Brazil Village, Extreme Restaurant and Bar, City Girls Sports Bar, Teak House Bar, MVP Sports Bar, The Bocas, La Vida in Maraval, Lima's Bar in South, Sammy's Chill Out, Point 14, Mojitos in Sangre Grande, KG Rock, Icebreaker, Levy's Bar in Rio Claro, Mamu's Bar in McBean, Raj Bar, St. Augustine, Hit and Run Bar, Esmeralda, Pablo Bar in Faizabad, Julian in Faizabad, Rum Station in San Francisco, Charles Bar in San Francisco, Championship, Rochard Road, Zumba in San Francisco, and a lot of these are in UNC constituencies. UNC control constituencies. They vote for, imagine you went and vote to kill your own business. Zumba in San Francisco, DNA Bar Ruka, D&D Restaurant Bar in Separia, Red Flag Bar, Sign Village Separia, Chillax in Faizabad, Sips Bar in Cunupia, Victory Bar, Takariwa, Scotchies. Right? Yeah. Plenty of them went and vote for the UNC. When UNC wins, yeah, the PNM mash up the economy, PNM. And then as Tanku was loved to see when he first became Minister of Finance, the PNM crashed the economy and they crashed, but yet still in a crashed economy. All these businesses were open. All these businesses were earning income and were hiring people. And a lot of these businesses, these bars that shut down, hired Venezuelans. So when now they can't find work, what think going to happen? What think going to happen? They were content to work in these bars and make a little money if they work in 2-3 bars. So now, and with this registration, I saw the latest registration exercise that was announced by the government. They said that the website would have received 138,000 hits. I pay him. But I thought Rowley says only 40,000 Venezuelans are here. And I had to shake my head again. The fully done strikes again. And when you all don't listen to the news, your Minister of Homeland Security clearly said all persons who are legible, all illegal immigrants who are legible, right? Not eligible, legible. He says so. Come forward and be registered. All illegal immigrants, regardless of your nationality. So if you're from Venezuela, you're from Nigeria, you're from Zimbabwe, you're from wherever, Cuba, wherever you're from. So we're not only entertaining Venezuelans like the PNM did. Everybody come. You're from Grenada, you're from Guyana, you're from St. Lucia, St. Vincent, you're here illegally, all are welcome to come and register. So the 138,000 hits didn't only apply to Venezuelans. And even if the majority of it was Venezuelans, what do you think would happen? If you're a Vene living in Trinidad and you're here, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has decided that they're going to register all illegal immigrants, right? Regardless of how long you have been here. You pick up the phone and you call your family in Venezuela and say, hey, they're having another registration exercise, so you need to find your backside in Trinidad. However, you make it here, get here, so that you could register. You understand? And since you're just going on our website, you could do it from Venezuela. Okay? I don't think they went to look at to the extent to go and see where the servers were and all of that and the IP address to see where it originated and if it is that the request came from Venezuela or if it came from Trinidad and Tobago only. So obviously, you call your family here, what this is I'm sending you the link. Just go on the link, register. Okay? They don't know that you're not in Trinidad. And once you get through, you get your appointment date or whatever it is, then you can come across here and head down the road and get registered. Because things still simmering in Venezuela. It has not improved. Mr. Maduro's removal has not overnight improved circumstances in Venezuela, right? There's still nothing much has changed. Except for the fact that they've managed to sell a few 100 million barrels of oil within the last couple of weeks. But it seems Up North is just not interested in Venezuela anymore. Since the head of Exxon, I think it was indicated that Venezuela right now is uninvestable. And the amount of money that would need to be expended to bring the energy sector in Venezuela up to scratch is a lot. And since Mr. Trump has less than 3 years left in office, these energy companies don't want to find themselves in a situation where they invest billions of dollars to improve the energy infrastructure in Venezuela. And then Mr. Trump leaves office and his successor comes into office and decides he or she is not going to pursue the same course of action that Mr. Trump has pursued with respect to Venezuela. And then Venezuela goes back to do the very same thing that they did last time, which is to nationalize these assets that belong to these foreign multinationals, kick them out of the country, and then they're left in the lurch, billions of dollars lost. So they're saying we're not willing to take that chance because Mr. Trump only has 2 years and some left. 2 years, 11 months and a few days, right? And he cannot run for, well, as of now, he cannot run for another term. So it's not to say, well, all right, we could take a chance. because he could still have another 4 years after that. There's no 4 years after that, right? Unless they find some way to change the constitution to allow him to run for another 2. And we don't know at that time he'll be well into his 80s, and whether or not that will be, even if his health circumstance will allow it, because there are right now some question marks over his health situation, right? I don't know. I just saying what I've read. So they're not willing to invest that money there. So it seems that Mr. Trump took a gamble on Venezuela that has not paid off. And so now his eyes are now set elsewhere, right? Namely Greenland. They have precious minerals and other things there. Okay. We're not blowing up boats anymore. We're no longer interested in human trafficking and drug trafficking in the region and so on. Okay? As evidenced by the fact of something that Mr. Minister Dave Tanku posted up on his Facebook page. And I tell you, these men brave, yes? I tell you. Let's see if I get this here. So where is it? Let's see. Member of Parliament. Give me 1 sec. Let me find this here, folks. Right. Let's see if I get this here. All right, where is it? Where is it? He posted something from the right. This is what I'm looking for here. Is it? Where is the full story? U.S. official, great abundance for TNT. I see great abundance in TNT's future in the energy sector. I think Point Lisas is going to be fine. It's going to be thriving. I think all your downstream sectors and upstream too, you have a lot to look forward to, maybe not in 2026, because these things take time. Obviously, it's coming even back to the heydays. I wanted to find the full article that he posted. All right, let me see if I get this here on the U.S. Embassy's website. Because the gentleman said something that I found to be very interesting. Right, where is it? So, let me see if I get this here. No. It's no, folks. All right, I will try and find it. But the gentleman who is, let me see if I get exactly what his position is here. Just Tanku Tike Dongoy, where's that one? All right, let's see here. All right, folks, I'll come back to that in a little bit, right? But he spoke about the assets that were in the region with respect to treating with Venezuela, and that those assets, some of it have already left the region, and he doesn't know how long the other assets will be remaining in the region, which says that all this talk about we about fighting drug trafficking and human trafficking, and that's why the boats are being blown up and so on. And Mrs. Prasad pledging her support and all of that. It seems that has come to an end. The borders still porous, or they fixed? I'm just asking. Our Coast Guard have diesel now to operate their vessels or no? Just asking that question too, because monies are allocated in the budget. How about the, Anil Roberts, under the last administration, every weekend he used to be going down the islands and he passing by Stobbles Bay and he wanted to do a video to show you, look, all the vessels park up there and this and that. They fixed. They're doing patrols 9 months in. Don't tell me they still park up. Because all they're fixing police vehicles, all the vehicles needed was a oil change. And? Okay. We'll come back to that just now. So your goodly Prime Minister last week announced with the defeat of the Zoso in the Senate, after they drag out the thing, hoping to, because we were hearing talk about, the government trying to see if they could convince any of the independent senators to assist them, to vote with them, all right? And hence the reason because remember, we in the lower house, we debated all three of those bills in one night, right? We started at 1:30 Friday and left and went home 3:30 Saturday morning. We stayed there for 14 hours, but for some reason the Senate couldn't do that. So they had to take what it took us 1 day to do, 14 hours to do, they needed to take 3 and 4 sessions to be able to do. Right? And there were questions being asked, is it that the government is trying to lobby independent senators to give them the support? Because that's their only crime plan, right? So they failed. Basically, the independent senators tell them, go so with your Zoso, rock so with that. We're not interested, particularly coming on the heels of the killing of Mr. Samaru and the injuring of his common law wife, and what person saw in those videos, and they were concerned that if you allow Zoso, that we can see a repeat of these things taking place, especially since you have your Minister of Homeland Security now coming out to say, well, we need to treat, you see, with this issue with people sharing footage of police shootings and so on and putting that out into the public domain. We have a problem with that. And by putting these things out and you're causing the public to formulate opinions and so on, and when they don't have the full story, so we'll have to consider bringing legislation to make it a crime, a criminal offense for you to publish, to share video camera footage from your camera that you spend your good money to buy and install, that the footage, if it shows the police acting in a manner that might suggest extrajudicial killings, and you share it in the public space, that you could find yourself before the courts and could make a jail, right? This is the same Minister of Homeland Security who just a couple months ago was advocating and wrote to the US Embassy calling on them to revoke and to cancel visas of citizens who, according to him, spreading propaganda on social media with respect to the situation with the US and Venezuela and all of these different things, right? And the US had to issue a stern rebuke telling them we don't operate so, rock so with that. This is the same man who would have signed the detention order for these 117 people who were let out yesterday, including Miss Olive Jack, right? He signed the detention order for this lady to spend 81 days in prison because she said something about the Prime Minister that they didn't like. So when you all accuse Rowley of being the biggest dictator, who really is the dictator now? Because at least Rowley didn't come to propose any legislation to restrict your freedoms, to restrict what our version of freedom of speech is, because we are not as liberal as the US, because you could get locked up here if you're for cussing and in public spaces, you cuss at police, you could do that in the US. But here, police bars are here cussing, they think they could put a charge on you, the use of obscene language. So we don't really have freedom of speech per se. It's limited. We have it, but it's limited. This is the same minister. And if this is the extent to which they want to go, this is the same minister who tell you, well, bulletproof vests and guns more important for the police than body cameras. So we're not really inclined to spend our money right now on body cams when we need to invest in proper equipment for the police, right? So like the bulletproof vests and stuff, some of the bulletproof vests that we have right now expired, they're outdated, they're old. Right? We need to get rid of that and bring in new ones. So that's more important than body cameras. Right? This same former police officer who is well aware of what takes place within the police service, intimately aware. In fact, he would have found himself a subject of the court on more than one occasion. Remember, he was on suspension for a number of years for a charge. He was charged, right, with common assault. He and some other, I think, police officer who had assaulted some man, some issue with, I can't remember the exact details and so on. All right? But he name call up in plenty things. Just saying. But he is telling you now, if you happen to have your camera in a certain place and a police shooting, I say killing, police shooting takes place, and you happen to capture footage of that event, that if you share it, you could find yourself before the courts. And then we saw last week Ian Allen went back to the area in which the incident took place. And while he was there, we saw jeep loads or van loads of police show up. And I think they went to the home, was reported, allegedly, where the recording would have taken place. All right? So persons are concerned, and rightly so. But Rowley was the dictator. Yeah, Rowley was the dictator. So I was making the point, your Honorable Prime Minister accused 2 independent senators of trying to solicit bribes to vote for the Zoso bill, right? To give their support to the government when they needed 4 votes in order for the Zoso bill to pass. And she's claiming that 2 senators, independent senators, would have approached a senior government senator, to try and see if they could solicit bribes for their support, which is a crime, all right? Because as a public official, you fall under the Integrity in Public Life Act, all right? That is a crime. You could make a jail for that. So here it is that your goodly Prime Minister has accused 2 senators of committing a crime, but she refuses to name them. So we can only assume that she is also refusing to cooperate with the police. Now, you can't compel her to cooperate, as we would have seen in the case of Marlene McDonald versus Kamla Persad-Bissessar, when Dr. Rowley would have told us that Mrs. McDonald would have come to him, or Miss McDonald would have come to him and informed him that she was advised by Kamla Persad-Bissessar that she was going to be arrested and that the police was coming for her any day now, which is an offense, tipping off. And when it is that that was announced, all right, and the police attempted to engage in an investigation to determine if Mrs. Persad-Bissessar had in fact committed a crime, Miss McDonald refused to cooperate with the police. She refused to answer, to say, yes, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar did in fact tell her that. And because of her lack of cooperation, the police indicated they could not take the investigation any further. And so Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, who really should have been before the courts now for that matter, well, she got off scot-free. So, yes, as an attorney, she understands she doesn't have to cooperate with the police. She don't want to disclose. Okay? It is what it is. So, as she says, these 2 senators must live with their shame, and she's not going to name them. She's not going to name and shame. But they know who they are, and they'll have to live with that shame for the rest of their life. And what is egregious about that is the fact that by not naming the 2, you incriminate 9, right? Because the population trying to figure out, I wonder who the 2 is, boy. She looking a little shaky, you know. He looking little, and this one, and that one. And so all 9 are now the subject of suspicion. So Peter paying for Paul, Paul pay for all. Okay? Because Persad-Bissessar made a claim. Not one shred of evidence. How did they approach? Did they call your government minister? Did they approach them in the chamber? How? Did they communicate via WhatsApp? Did they communicate via email? Nothing? Tell us that, please, that now. How did they approach? And the bigger question that must be asked, why did these 2 senators feel so comfortable, assuming that she's telling the truth? Why did they feel so comfortable approaching your minister, your senior minister, senator? Why did they believe that this person might have been pliable and willing to accede to their request for personal favors? Clever man said, I wonder why. Next thing I go and approach this man and he sell me out. But why did they feel so comfortable to approach? Madam, you should be concerned about that, about the integrity of your own ministers, your senior ministers. Because if in fact what you are telling us is true, and a man felt so comfortable, he was so convinced that he could approach your minister, ask for a personal favor, and get it, tells you something about how your ministers are viewed and with respect to their integrity level. All right? Because if their integrity was above reproach, they would not have been approached. So the fact that they were approached suggests that perhaps if what you're saying is true, that the overture might have been made first by your minister, rather than the other way around, the two senators. Because why did they choose this particular person to go to this particular person? So is it that if what you're telling us is true, that they were simply responding to an overture? Yeah, what now? We need to pass this thing, because we have no other crime plan. We want. So is it that offers were made? Just say, name your price. Price named. But of course, the minister does not have the authority to grant such requests. So they had to come to you. Say, well, yeah, boss, we talked to so and so and so and so, and they're willing to play ball, but this is what they want. And say, well, all right. Well, let me see what they're going to do. Because clearly, the approach would have been made before the vote, right? So look at this. And this is your honest prime minister, who is a senior counsel, attorney at law, who understands the law. And just the other day, come to tell us that Trinidad and Tobago is a lawless dump. Yes, a lawless dump. You all have a set of lawless citizens. But here it is. An approach was made according to her. 2 senators committed a crime. Came and tried to solicit bribes. Okay? We see all the time police who try to solicit bribes some people to drop charges, and then sting operation, and they get catch and charged and end up behind bars. So in the same vein, these 2 senators approached your senior minister, and you said nothing. You didn't come to the population. You didn't put out a statement, as you're accustomed doing, a press release. You didn't go on X. You didn't go on WhatsApp and put out something to say, I have been informed by one of my senior ministers that he was approached by 2 independent senators who were soliciting personal favors in exchange for their vote for Zoso. You didn't do that. So you were aware of it. You were aware that a crime was committed. As an attorney, lawless dump that you say you plan to treat with, you said nothing, and you waited until the vote. And then after the vote didn't go in your favor, then you come out and see. So the question must be asked. If these 2 senators had voted yes, and you had gotten the votes of 2 other senators, independent senators, right? The other 2 didn't ask for anything, they didn't get nothing. These 2 came and they said, here what? We'll give you the vote. All right, no problem. Let's see how the vote go first, because you don't want to get them thing, and then you're not too sure how the others going to vote, and then you still lose anyway. So all right, well, if they say they want this, no problem, we will entertain. Now let me see if we could get the other 2. So if those 2 had voted in favor of, and the other 2 had voted in favor because they genuinely believe that this thing is needed, and you got the 4, what would have happened? Would you have still come out and say that 2 independent senators asked for personal favors in exchange for their votes? Would you have done that, or would you have kept it quiet? You, madam, who is above reproach, you who are pillar of virtue, you who are against lawlessness, kept quiet, hush your mouth, fingers on your lip, your mouth have a zip, and said nothing prior to the vote. You didn't expose these 2 frauds, these 2 criminals. You didn't expose them. You waited to see how the vote would have gone. And having not gone your way, then you decide to come and bust the mark, to out them. But you're not going to call the names. Can you leave it so? If you call the names, then of course you had to be a witness, because you had to say who was the minister they approached. When did they approach the minister? How long were you aware that this approach was made? Based on the integrity in public life of these two independent senators committed a crime. And you aided and abetted in that crime. Because you didn't report it to the police, you didn't report it to the Integrity Commission. Madam. So you were well aware. Where you come and say now, but it's only after the vote, the minister come and tell me, so why he didn't tell you before? So that you could have out them then. Well, if that's the case, and he only came and tell you after, you should fire him. Because then he was guilty of committing a crime, aiding and abetting. Because if he did not shoot it down at the time, and he came to tell you, expecting what? Did he come to you for permission? Or did he just come to inform you? That's what we need to know, madam. How long did you know? When did this approach take place? How did it take place? And why did you not go to the Integrity Commission and the police? And why are you still insisting that you're not going to cooperate? You're not going to name names. So what you have effectively done is, even if your minister, who claims to have been approached, was inclined to speak and to go to the police and go to the Integrity Commission, you have now tied your minister's hands. You have now glued your minister's lips. Because if you say you're not going to name names, he cannot do otherwise. So you have now bound your minister to do something that may be against his conscience, assuming that he has a conscience. But you are against lawlessness. And you say in the papers, I must see it here. Hell for criminals. There's here. What she say here? PM warns of another state of emergency if gangs and just released detainees do not comply with the law. Law is law, madam. There are no big law and small law. There are laws in place. And what you told us was a breach of the law, which makes you a criminal, which makes your minister a criminal, assuming that you all are telling the truth. You all are accomplices to a crime that was committed. Soliciting bribes is a crime. And so long as you refuse to name names and to cooperate with the police, and you allow these alleged perpetrators to go free, then you are just as guilty. Or even worse, because as the law says, the upholder is worse than the thief. And as Mr. Manning used to say, show me a liar and I'll show you a thief. What is she? I leave it to you, members of the jury, to decide what she is. How can you believe anything that comes out of this woman's mouth going forward? Anything at all. And then you come to try to distract now, as your mentor does, right? When you find yourself in the hot seat, to come and play the race bogey and talk about PNM and supporting, and it's the Africans, the African base at the PNM are the ones who all kind of chop it talk, right? But the PNM loves to quote to blow the racial dog whistle, right? According to you, madam, you say so. But every time, we will not forget Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, that in the 10 years that Keith Rowley was Prime Minister, when efforts were made to assist the African community, at every turn, the UNC opposed it. Every turn. If anything was done by the last administration, and even administrations before, under Patrick Manning, that even smelled or hinted at affirmative action for persons of African descent, what happened? Well, they went to the courthouse, the Equal Opportunities Commission, to complain about the government engaging in discrimination, and they put in things in place for only persons of African descent and not the wider citizenry. And more often than not, you all were successful in the courts because you all have best lawyers. Not so? When Dr. Rowley said we're going to spend $100 million in Laventille, what did you all come out and say? Oh, they're going on and they're going to use that $100 million. That's just a ruse for them to fund the criminal element, and all that money going in the pockets of the criminal elements, when Dr. Rowley said that they were going to use the money to bring in, they had retired Defense Force officers, and as we know, the retirement age in the Defense Force is as early as age 45. So some of these officers who would have recently retired from the service, they're still young, some of them looking for opportunities, that we would give the opportunities to them to go into the communities and work with the people there. The pool that has been down for over a year, madam, the majority of which has been under your tenure, which was contributing to development in the community. When Dr. Rowley and they build the pool in Laventille, when they build the pool in Morva, you all had an issue with that. Alleging all kind of corruption in the issuance of the contract for the construction of the pools. When they retain the services of Coast Guard and the Army to come in there and give classes to the people, and the pools were being used. If you really cared about these communities, that is where you would start. But for the last 9 months under you, you all have been in charge of the last 9 months. The pool has been down, and I am fully aware that the member for the Parliament for the constituency has made representation In fact, he would have asked questions about it during the budget debate of the Minister of Sport. And assurances were given that the matter would be treated with. And to date, it has not been done. The budget was read and passed since October. We are now in February. But you're so care about these communities, and it's the PNM keeping back these communities, these at-risk communities, where the majority of the supporters come from, and these constituencies have supported the PNM for years, and it's mostly Africans. But for the last 9 months, so the pool has been down for a longer period of time under you than it was under the PNM. But you're so care. What are you doing? Any allocation for that? Like I even ask your Minister of Sport because he don't even have time for his own constituency, so he can't have time for other people on. When it is that his constituents are coming to me to tell me that when they go to his office to make an appointment, they're being told they had to wait until February. Well, February is here. And this was since November last year. So if you go now in February to get an appointment, they might tell you come back in June. What is he doing? You're all in charge. Fix it. And that's all the mantra. But we will fix it. The last administration did this, and the last administration, but we will fix it, and we will fix it, and we will fix it. Well, it's been 9 months and you haven't fixed it. 9 months. But once you talk about the PNM and the PNM and the population dealt with the PNM 9 months ago. That's why we're on the opposition bench, madam. Hell for criminals, right? But you need to start in your own party and in your own government, madam. Start with your government, all right? Because right now on your government bench, you have one man before the court on $1 million bail for the second time for the same offense. You have another man who is the subject of a civil lawsuit where it is alleged that he would have been part of a criminal enterprise to defraud the state of hundreds of millions of dollars. And that matter, which was proceeding nicely, proceeding smoothly through the court, prior to April 28, all of a sudden has hit a snag in the last 9 months, much to the chagrin of the presiding judge, who is of the view that this matter has been on his docket for too long. And he had to warn the MBD he will not tolerate any shenanigans and foolishness because he is anxious to deal with this matter. Start there. The man who sits to your immediate left, all right? Morticia Adams impersonator, the man who for years carried your handbag, the man who could not give an answer as to why he gave you 2 checks totaling $135,000. Madam, that man who stands accused of trying to hide millions of dollars in ill-gotten gains in his mother's bank account and in her life insurance policy, that man, who we are told was the subject of a police investigation for the last 5 years, that man, deal with him. When you want to talk about hell for criminals, deal with that, madam. You have a man who occupies a significant ministry, who stands accused of having solicited support from criminal elements for his election campaign, some $20 million. Hence the reason he has all of this security today. Because it is claimed that the elements, promises were made to them for their support, and those promises have not been kept, have not been delivered. As you all love to say, promise made, promise kept, promise delivered. So it seems promises were made, but have not been kept, not been delivered, and so his life is in danger. Deal with he. Hell for criminals. When for years, over a decade, madam, you have defended criminality. You who said for 23 years plus that the Piarco Airport scandal was just PNM propaganda, PNM smear campaign designed to make the UNC look corrupt. There was no corruption there. But a woman who sits 2 to 3 seats down from you in the parliament chamber is on record as having testified to wrongdoing that she saw with her own eyes. But you say, nah, no criminality there. You supported 2 attorneys who were before the court charged for conspiracy, fraud, wrongdoing, and got off on a technicality because the main witness refused to testify. You who are an attorney at law, consider yourself to be our best lawyer. You are senior counsel. Average citizen like myself who has no learning in law. was able to read the evidence that is before the court and could deduce that these men were guilty as sin? You are telling me that a man confessed, paid over $2 million in restitution, destroyed his professional career as an attorney, and for what? Just because? Just because. Right? So he just see these two men, these two fantastic lawyers, or as you call them boys is good lawyers. And he just decided, I'm going to lie. Yeah, I'm going to lie on them. Right. Yeah, he decided to do that. Yeah? Okay. And when we read the particulars of that matter, you say them boys is good lawyers. Yeah. Again, PNM, Paris and indemnity. But David Lee is still the Minister of Housing. You have indicated, right? You have a man sitting as a minister in the office in the Ministry of Housing who stands accused of stealing millions of dollars from the life support program. We had a whole report from our newspapers, 3 consecutive weekends. Every report, this man is identified, not by name, but it was very easy to determine who they were referring to. Millions of dollars. You were aware of this, and yet still, what did you do? You foist him on the population and make him a minister and have him every day on social media cussing the last administration, the former prime minister, or like they say, the former prime minister. That's what he's being paid to do. This man cannot demonstrate, do 1 doubles and coffee to tell you, well, this is what I did today. And this is how I improved the lot of citizens of this country. This is what I did in the ministry that I've been assigned to. Nothing. You are seeing events that are being hosted by that ministry and he is not even present. Madness. But you talking about hell for criminals? When all around you are a bunch of criminals? Madam, you serious? You can't be serious. Start with your cabinet, man. That's where you need to start. If you're really serious about hell for criminals, start with your cabinet. And then we might take you seriously. For right now, behave yourselves. Behave yourselves or another state of emergency will be called. That's the warning from Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar yesterday evening to gangs and detainees held during the state of emergency who were released as it came to an end at midnight. So you arrested all of these people. Now, the state of emergency has come to an end. We were told, don't forget, back in July, we were given reasons as for the state of emergency. They had intelligence that said somebody was going to take a rocket launcher and blow off half of the office of the Attorney General. There were threats against the life of the Prime Minister and all of that. Remember all them things? Well, everybody who was detained under the state of emergency was released. Nobody charged for a rocket launcher. Nobody charged for any plot to overthrow the state. Nobody charged for any attempted coup. Nothing. No rocket launcher found, no grenade found, no gun found. Absolutely. And all of this intelligence that informed the decision to put you, Trinidad and Tobago, under a state of emergency for 6 months. And everybody was released yesterday without charge. So I guess the men that they have down in Tetron and down in Stobles Bay, they will take them back to the maximum security prison now because state of emergency ended. And they who we were told were the masterminds of the plot, they have not even been charged. All this great intelligence that Commissioner Guevara told us about, all this intelligence that John Jeremy told us about, and yet still, all the people you move from central prison, the maximum security prison, and carry them down Chagaramas, not at charge. In 6 months, nobody charged, no evidence, nothing. But the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago had their constitutional rights suspended for 6 months because UNC claimed that they had intelligence. And then they came on the night of the debate or the vote for the ZOSO in an attempt to explain why it is that they weren't able to entertain any of the well-reasoned, sound amendments that were put forward by members of the opposition and members of the independent bench to improve the legislation, improve it. to make it a little more palatable so that maybe they could consider supporting it. Over 106 amendments proffered, and the Attorney General accepted none. None. So he risked when you could have taken it under consideration, because you're saying we're working with a timeline, right? A deadline. Because the state of emergency is supposed to come to an end on the 31st. So we need to get this thing passed like yesterday and get it assented to and whatnot, as the case may be, so that it could become law and we could do what we need to do and we cannot afford. And we could have made a difference, sir, because of your failure to entertain the amendments to improve the legislation, right? So that it would be a little less draconian than what you all originally proposed. And you yourself admitted it was good amendments. But because of time constraints, you couldn't entertain it. The bill was defeated. So it's not law. Rather than accept the amendments, go through the process, extend by a week, maybe 2 weeks, and get it in place, and improve something that could benefit the citizens. You know what they're trying to blame the PNM. Oh, every time you hear a crime take place in a PNM constituency and you talk about Zoso and this could have been prevented. The supporters posting up this thing about some 3 people who were shot in Laventille, I think, including some 3-year-old girl or 11-year-old girl or something like that who got shot. Yes, I hope Marsha Walker and all of them who was protesting in front of the Red House, I hope they're happy now. But this happened under a state of emergency. It didn't happen on 1st of February. We were still under an SOE when it happened. So if the police were not able to prevent it under a state of emergency, you all want to convince us that they could have done it under a Zoso? Rock so with that rubbish. Utter garbage. But when you're fully dunce, and you can't conceptualize that, but that's what they come in with. I will use every means within the law to make criminals and their friends and families' lives an absolute hell. So for the last 9 months, you didn't think that made sense to make the criminals' lives hell. You needed the state of emergency to come to an end for you to make their lives hell. As if you haven't already made the lives of the families of these criminals hell. With all of these, with your policy measures for the last 9 months. I mean, if it's possible to put them through more hell than that, well, I tell you, madam, you deserve an award. In a post on her social media platforms yesterday, hours before the SOE declared on July 18 last year came to an end, Prasad Bisesa said it's time to tip the country's scales towards law-abiding citizens and that she does not care about the tired, outdated, woke, there's that word again, race-baiting and bigoted propaganda. You dare to talk about race-baiting, madam? If anyone wants to mash up the place and burn down the country, go ahead. That's your democratic choice. However, anyone wanting to do this should understand by now that I am willing to do what it takes to keep decent, law-abiding citizens safe. So be certain that I will meet you head on. What are you going to do? You're going to give us a version of what's taking place up north, but we don't have the National Guard here for you to deploy to replace the police. Okay? So are you going to do what you said in 2015, release the dogs of war, give no quarter? Remember you said that at the launch when you were cutting the ribbon at the Piarco police station? Release the dogs of war, give no quarter, show no mercy, shoot first and ask questions later. Those who commit brutality against law-abiding citizens will be met with brutality from me. That's a promise. My lady shooting from the hip, but only drawing blanks. 2 caps gun she have and talking as if it is his 245s. The SOE under the Prasad Bisesa administration was called at the recommendation of Commissioner of Police Alistair Guevara based on high sophisticated crime syndicate that was operating right. So I remember the point I wanted to make, that just prior to the vote being taken last week on the Zoso, the Attorney General claimed, based on intelligence that they have, there is need for us to move with urgency in passing this legislation. Based on intelligence. So I guess the intelligence is not valid anymore because the bill failed. So what did that intelligence tell you? Something was going to happen? What is the plan B that we hear about? How do you plan to treat with this intelligence that required this bill had to be passed, that we couldn't accept any amendments and we needed it passed before the 31st of January, but it didn't pass? The intelligence still there? The threat that the intelligence that was uncovered, that said that you all needed to pass this thing urgently, it still exists? The threat still exists? So what's the plan, Mr. Attorney General? All of this set of foolishness. Well, we have intelligence. Based on intelligence, we need to pass this thing like yesterday. So if all you're having any second thoughts, we have information that something going to happen, so you all need to do the right thing. Same information you all had in July last year? Same intelligence sources? But this is the man, the Attorney General, who come and tell earlier. Well, you know the state of emergency that Rowley and them called in December of 2024, December 30th, it was based on nothing. There was no threat. Rowley was in a party in Tobago and just decided to call a state of emergency. But there was no threat. There was nothing. It was based on nothing. Well, it seems that your state of emergency, sir, was also based on nothing, because you've arrested no one. You have found absolutely nothing. No charges laid, nothing. Nobody incarcerated, nobody before the courts. So all of this intelligence seems to have been artificial, made up. But we will never know. Because if you are saying the intelligence forces, when the PNM was in power, knew that there was no threat, but provided the president with false information for her to declare a state of emergency, then you are basically saying that the intelligence forces were complicit, that they are pliable, right, to being used by the state. And that's it seems you did the same thing. At least when Keith Rowley and his administration called the state of emergency on the 30th of December 2024, we know that there were some killings that took place mere days before, and there was talk about reprisal killings coming out of that, which was not far-fetched. But you all come and tell us, again, something going to happen. We hear about 1990 coup, comparisons being made to 1990 coup. So you all took it miles further than what the PNM told us. They say we had some killings, we hear reprisal killings because somebody people get killed, right? Their partners they know who did the killing and they plan to seek revenge. And we're trying to avoid loss of life, because when they come, they're not going specifically targeting one. They will just, we hear so-and-so lineman by a bar, and let me go and lick him up, and we open fire, and if it is that innocent people who lineman by the same bar get killed in an attempt to kill who we come to kill, hard luck. Right? Which was not far-fetched at all. But you all came and tell us you all had evidence, intelligence. Well, not evidence, intelligence, information. Something was going to happen, and you all made a comparison to the 1990 coup. Same thing you all did in 2011. Right? You stood before a mic, Mr. Attorney General, before the cameras, and told the nation that there was intelligence that half of your building was going to be blown up with a rocket launcher. You haven't caught the person who had the rocket launcher, you haven't found the rocket launcher, and your building is still standing. And nobody was ever held for that. Your UNC government was actually trying to dilute and limit the state's SOE powers by introducing the ZOSO legislation to use instead of an SOE. This is Pasabi Sessa talking here, right? Your UNC government could have simply called another state of emergency, she had said last week. With the end of the state of emergency, it's also an end to the sweeping powers granted to the TTPS, and citizens' rights, which were suspended, have been restored. But while the Prime Minister said the UNC government and the security forces are prepared for the end of the SOE, no further details have been made public on security measures to be taken by the administration, because they have none. And I think that this statement by the Prime Minister lends credence to the belief that the state of emergency was based on a false premise, that what we were told was untrue, and it was ready to deal with crime because they had no other crime plan. And every time they spoke about the success of the state of emergency, it was always against the backdrop of, well, the murder rate this year is less than what it was last year, and we've seen a 42% decline in murder, and this and that, and murders fell by so and so. But no reference to what they originally told us was the reason for the state of emergency. That is the yardstick that should have been used to measure the success. Well, we had intelligence that XYZ group was planning to overthrow the government, was planning to disrupt the country. We were able to arrest so-and-so, 5 people. We were able to detain X amount of persons. We were able to recover 2 rocket launchers. We were able to recover 10 hand grenades, so-and-so that we believe was supposed to have been used in the plot. Nothing of the sort. So you established a state of emergency. Based on that, you enjoyed zero success with respect to that. And something totally unrelated, or so you told us, is what you are using to measure its success. So clearly we know what it was about. So now your Zoso fail. Your minister tell us, oh, they have a crime, a plan B. Don't worry. We anticipated that we weren't going to get the support. So we have a plan B in place. What's plan B? For the Prime Minister to put out a message threatening criminals and telling them, behave yourself or else I will call another state of emergency. Right. Behave yourself, otherwise, don't get me vexed, because I'll rest another state of emergency in the tail. I will come next week or week after and announce another state of emergency that does not require the support of the opposition, and we will do it all over again. 15 days, and then we'll come back to the parliament in 15 days, and we will extend by 3 months, and then at the end of that 3 months, we'll come back and extend by another 3 months. All right? And hopefully in that space of time, we'll be able to figure out something. Maybe another one of my ministers will go somewhere and see something like Alexander did, went to Jamaica. He and Sobers and Ralph Maraj to represent the Prime Minister, and came upon what they considered to be a bright idea, came back here and tried to implement it. So you might probably go to some, maybe while Mr. Munilal is in India trying to sell the refinery, he might come up with a brilliant idea and come back with that. Or she could send Alexander to some crime symposium somewhere, and he could probably come up with another brilliant idea and see what they could try to do. Meanwhile, the country can brace itself for some lawsuits. Totally unfair. Families cry relief and anger as state of emergency detainees walk free. So can we expect to see that similar to 2011, where after several persons were detained under that state of emergency, came out and sued the state for millions of dollars, which the PNM had to pay, that these persons, 117 persons who were detained without charge, no evidence of any wrongdoing, any link to any wrongdoing, that they will now be seeking attorneys to sue the state for millions of dollars. And more than likely, they will look for UNC lawyers to sue the state, as they are accustomed doing. All right? They are the best lawyers. So, what's that thing? So a total of 85 people, including several females, were scheduled to be released ahead of the SOE, expiration of the SOE at midnight yesterday, and a total of 32 detainees were released on Friday. So 32 on Friday, and they're expecting another 85 to be released yesterday. Without charge, they were deprived their freedom. On what basis, we don't know, but it will be tested in the court of law, because I am certain there will be lawyers lining up to speak with these families and these people, willing to take their case to sue the state for money that we don't have. TNT spent 301 days under state of emergency since December 2024. Senior officers, fewer than 200 body cams working in TTPS. I remember when it was announced by the last administration in one of the budgets how many body cameras I think they were going to purchase. I think it was 1,000 or 1,500 or something like that in the first instance. And Mrs. Prasad Bisesa went on her Monday Night Forum platform and bashed the then government and talk about 1,500 body cameras for 7,000 police officers, and that is not enough, and what that, and this government not serious about fighting crime, and they don't care about the citizens who are being brutalized by the police, and blah, 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 and all of that rubbish. You remember that? 1,500 was not enough? Now we are reading fewer than 200 body cams working in the TTPS. She has been Prime Minister for 9 months. What have they done? When a contract was signed, I believe, yes, $25 million allocated to purchase some 3,000 body cameras or so. That contract was pulled, and of course we know the Minister of Homeland Security announced that with great aplomb during the budget debate. That's not a priority for us. The priority is other equipment, bulletproof vests, guns and vehicles and so on, not body cameras. Okay? But we saw over the last week or so the absolute and definite need for police officers to be wearing body cameras. Right? Well, we will look at another newspaper, The Express. 8 cops charged with murder. Killing of 3 friends in Morva in 2020. 8 police officers. One of whom has been identified as being a very close friend of a government minister. This one here. All right, there's video footage circulating on social media right now where this government minister in the company of this person who it is said sits on the constituency executive of that particular minister. All right, the information is out there. 8 police officers to face trial for murder. 8 police officers have been charged with a 2020 triple killing in Morvah, a case that triggered public outrage and protests in several Port of Spain communities have been committed to stand trial for murder in the High Court. The committal was ordered on Friday following the conclusion of a sufficiency hearing before Master Margaret Sukraj Goswami, who ruled that the prosecution had presented enough evidence to require the officers to answer the charges before a judge and jury. And it goes on to identify the 8 police officers. The matter followed events captured on CCTV footage, which showed police officers on patrol in Morvah intercepting a gold Nissan Tiida hatchback near the Autoguru building. The vehicle was occupied by Jacob, Diamond, and Clinton. According to evidence outlined during the proceedings, officers approached the car with firearms drawn. Jacob, who was in the back seat, was seen exiting the vehicle with his hands raised, while Clinton, the driver, had both hands above the steering wheel. As Diamond lowered a window, 8 officers opened fire on the vehicle. Jacob had left his nearby home moments earlier to buy a bottle of rum to celebrate his birthday and had accepted a lift from Clinton. Goes on to provide further details. The shooting sparked sustained anger in communities including Morvah, Laventille, parts of Port of Spain, and marked an unprecedented moment in local law enforcement history, the largest number of police officers charged with murder arising from a single incident. But this, ladies and gentlemen, your minister, and thank goodness for that. Again, that was footage from somebody's private camera. Don't forget that, just as the case with this Joshua Samaru. And your exasperated Minister of Homeland Security is of the view that the sharing of such footage should be made a criminal offense. This is the same man who night after night, evening after evening on Beyond the Tape used to tell you, if you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. And now you say, if you see something, keep it to yourself. Say nothing. Right? Let the police come and get the footage and do what they will with it. The public need not see. And based on the narrative that we would have gotten from the Commissioner of Police, no less a person than the Commissioner of Police, the original narrative, that there was an exchange of gunfire, hail of gunfire in which Mr. Samaru lost his life and his common law wife was paralyzed. When we had the same Commissioner of Police who originally said, based on the information that he has, he's not going to suspend his officers, they are not going to be removed from active duty, and instead he's going to send them for counseling. Now, in the space of a few days, they are now off of active duty. Commissioner seems to have had a change of heart. I wonder what led to that, Commissioner. And this is the problem. When you're quick to jump out yourself, your whole self, before a proper investigation has been done to defend the officers based on the original report that they gave, not being aware, not knowing that there was camera footage. So we will give a story. And then the footage came out that shows a totally different story. And what do you do? When the citizens are calling for your resignation, when the citizens are calling for you to be removed as Commissioner of Police because of your decision to not suspend these officers, your predecessor is saying he suspended the officer, but then he too, in this very same matter, as you all recall, right? He, as Commissioner, came out and said his men were fired upon, came out to defend his officers. Well, remember, 1 shot, 1 kill, and then he had to backtrack. It was the same thing that happened with Commissioner McDonald Jacob when there was the shooting in where was it? I think it was La Puerta or Rich Plain, when the police officer was shot in the head. And then the claim was that they were chasing this guy and he shot the police officer. And Mr. Jacob came out the same night. You touch one, you touch all. Big talk. And then what happened? Turns out that the person who shot the police officer was in fact a police officer. 2 police officers were arrested for that matter. And I think they are both behind bars. Or one of them, I think, is behind bars. And the other one is on bail, I believe. 2 police officers. 3 commissioners of police, quick to jump out the block and defend their officers, and ended up having to eat their size 12s afterwards. I'm among those who had high hopes for this commissioner. He was an unknown entity. Since then, I must say, all he's provided us with is a set of cliches, a set of big talk, and nothing tall on talk and short on substance, unfortunately, Mr. Commissioner. But it's only been 9 months, so we will say that it's a learning curve for you. Meanwhile, as we turn to the country's economic situation, as I started with, let me see what's the time now. All right. Jump over 4:30. Brown, Mariano Brown, that is. Leisure job losses signal tough times ahead. Former Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Mariano Brown, is warning that employment losses in the bar and restaurant sector are an important signal as he responded to reports of multiple closures in the leisure sector. The signal is that it is becoming more difficult to survive, and this is just the beginning, he said. Brown noted that while the numbers being bandied about closures remain a small fraction of roughly 25,000 businesses, establishments nationwide, falling retail demand has broader implications. If retail demand is falling, this is going to have significance all around for the retail industry, which accounts for approximately 50% of the economy. Brown added that the situation would become clearer at mid-year once the impact of higher operating costs and public sector wage increases are fully known. On Wednesday, management of Scotchy's Sports Bar on Tumpuna Road, Arima, my constituency, announced its closure through a media release shared on social media. The statement pointed to rising operating costs, noting for the past 8 years, we have created memorable events and lifetime friendships at this location. However, with the sudden 100% increase in alcohol, 400% increase in amusement gaming tax from $6,000 to $24,000 per screen, increased liquor license fee from $1,800 to $9,000, it is difficult to stay afloat at this time. And as the deadline approaches for many of these bars to renew their license, I understand it's in April or something like that, we're likely to see more closures. And when I read comments on social media, again, from supporters of the UNC, yeah, that's a good thing. Now when them bars close down, we'll have less drunk driving, and we will have more people will now have more time to spend with their families and more quality time with their families. Really? If drinking is a man's vice, you don't think he can find a bar somewhere to drink? Not all the bars have closed down. And if the bar becomes too expensive or inaccessible, what do you think you're going to do? You just go to the grocery and buy the liquor and take it home. So some of these housewives who are happy when their husband leaves in the morning and he doesn't come back until quality hours in the night. And you talk about quality time with family? Really? Some of these women happy that these men are not around. Happy. And some of these husbands happy that their wives not around, because it's not only the men drink. I'm driving this morning on Mausika Road and I seen a woman walking with a cigarette in one hand and I forget what you call this thing. It's Rude Boy or something like that in another, right? So when and this belief that bars only serve the poor people drinking and getting drunk and rubbish. You have some people who will go to a bar like myself. I don't go to bars, but if perchance, I'm convinced. Sometimes we have a meeting or something, and my executive will say, "Boss, MP, we're going by Pro Bar to drink something. Come now, come on, chill with us." I say, "All right," and I will go. But I drink in Shandy, Malta. I don't drink alcohol, right? And we sit down there and we will talk. Some people might drink a Carib, a Stag. They will sit in that same one Carib and one Stag whole night. You have one or two others who might partake of something a little stronger, their gin or their vodka or something like that. But everybody is sober at the end of the night. And it's just to relax, recreate. For some people, it's a stress reliever for them. At the end of a hard week, to just go by the bar and sit down, we'll talk and drink a Mackerson, a Royal, something like that. But these UNC supporters, the lengths and depths that they are going to defend the foolishness of this administration, utter rubbish. You advocating for businesses to shut down? And you think that's a good idea? For people to lose their jobs, for families to lose their livelihoods, and you all saying that that is good? If it was under the PNM, you'd never support that. These were the same people who, during COVID, when the bars were shut down, were complaining, well, open back the bars, even if for a few hours, because the bars are making money and this and that, and the workers there as somebody lowest paid. And the same people, who were advocating during COVID for the bars to reopen, Cousin Rowley today praising the closure of bars. And it's all based on ethics and morals. Yes, it's a good thing. And these clowns don't realize that that is less tax revenue for the state, that you will have more people unemployed, more families struggling, parents who cannot afford it to send the children to school and pay bills. That is what that is going to do. And the ripple effect of tens of thousands of people who are having lost their jobs, less money being spent in the economy. Therefore, eventually, the small businesses are going to suffer. The neighborhood parlor, when everybody come in to take credit because they don't have money to buy food, so they come in by the parlor and they want to trust this and trust that, and they're not paying the bills. And the tab keep going up. They get a little work with the government, POPs program for the upkeep of public spaces. And after 3 fortnights, you're not paying the people, or you paid 1 fortnight and still owing them 2. So when they get this 1 fortnight pay, that money already dead because they owe everybody under the sun. So they're right back in the same situation. So they come to the shop owner to clear the debt that they had for the last 6 weeks and then restart again. And that making sense. That making sense to them. When it is that the shop owner now, everybody owing, there is no revenue to be able to restock, what is going to happen? All of these little things, all of these small businesses, so places that when we see these bars and so on, it's the same CPEP worker and URP worker and forestry worker and others who might have come to the bar and lime, shoot some pool, and while they're there, drink a beer or two, contributing, but now they have no money, or what little money they have, they cannot afford to use it for that. So the bar shut down. No more license fees for the government, no more taxes on the gaming tables, and all of these different things, which impacts your revenue. And so when they are not spending, they're not going to the groceries to buy things as they could before. I went to a grocery this morning just to pick up something, and it was an interesting exercise. It's something that I've never done before. And there was a lady in front of me, and she came, she looked like struggling a little bit. So I'm looking to see what she purchased. So she picked up 2 packs of meat, 2 cans of peas, some rice, lentils, split peas, the basic things, small pack of sugar, flour. And I said, how these people living? How? And I'm trying to gauge, because when people come to me every week and they're asking for help and so on, and if they give them a food card, the food card is $550 one time, you give them a hamper, and you thinking, well, you're giving them some kind of help. Right? Trying to figure out what is it that persons in those positions purchase, so that when we give out hampers, we have a better idea. Because you have these generic hampers that the groceries put in things like paper towels and stuff, which I think is totally unnecessary. Right? Put proper things in the hamper. Right? People can't eat paper towels. But I mean, you could see these people struggling. How long whatever she bought, they might last, a week? I don't know how many people in her family. But that UNC supporters think that it is a good thing that bars are shutting down, because all of a sudden, their moral meter is on. All of a sudden, they understand the benefits of it. And you think that because the bar shut down, and you telling yourself, well, right, the man will stop drinking. Really, he's going to stop drinking? Well, let's say he stops drinking. And he goes home and he's frustrated because he's accustomed to taking a little sours. Right? And the wife says something to get him upset, and he just tripped and hits her a cuff. Domestic violence. Because he's home a lot more now. The 2 bars or 3 bars in the area shut down. So he can't go online with his friends and just exhale. So he just home, frustrated. And everything the wife says, frustrated him. And you think that's a good idea. And the interesting is that a lot of these bars, as I read out just now, it's in UNC constituencies. You're shooting yourself in your own foot. But then when it is your husband end up at one of these venues who was working in the bar because bar closed and she need money, you're vexed. You look for that. So when all supporting stupidness, I don't understand how some of these UNC supporters thinking about it anyway. Maybe I do. The operator said they had decided to quit while we are ahead and reassess the economic climate to avoid damaging the brand. The release added that bars were nearing recovery 3 years after COVID-19 disruption before the new fiscal measures took effect. This vicious taxation not only crippled the restaurant and bars, but also put its future in line with the extinction of an entire industry, it stated. Let me repeat that. This vicious taxation not only crippled the restaurant and bars, but also put its future in line with the extinction of an entire industry. Over the weekend, Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Bars and Restaurants echoed those concerns in a public post entitled "An Industry on the Brink," a plea from the Bar Association of Trinidad and Tobago. The coalition said the sector was facing an unprecedented crisis. You know what unprecedented means? Never happened before. In the 49 to 51 years that the PNM would have governed Trinidad and Tobago, the Bar Association said it didn't happen then. This is unprecedented. This is the first time this has happened, and it's not the PNM in office. Noting that sales were already declining after excise duties on alcohol were increased in October last year, the group said consumer behavior had shifted, with patrons increasingly purchasing alcohol from groceries and liquor marts, many of which now function as informal social spaces. And this shift has hollowed out traditional bars while creating unregulated drinking environments, the coalition stated. It also linked declining foot traffic to increased traffic fines and roadblocks. So you increase the price of alcohol, so people can't afford to buy alcohol in the bars, and those who might still be willing to put aside a little kakada to go in the bar, are afraid to do so because they know they can't need a little fixing, and they don't want to get a ticket. Heavier fines and custodial penalties for drinking and driving, coupled with frequent roadblocks, inspecting vehicles in detail, have discouraged people from leaving their communities altogether, the post said, adding that bars were being forced to adjust to collapsing demand. The coalition described recent increases in liquor license fees and amusement gaming taxes as disproportionate. It noted the spirit retail license fees rose from $1,800 to $9,000, while amusement gaming taxes increased from $6,000 to $25,000 per machine. Rates, it said, now exceed those applied to casinos. The organization also challenged claims that a bar earns $30,000 per month, arguing that such assumptions ignore the basic economics of business. Data from point-of-sale systems, it said, show average weekday sales of about 2,000 and weekend sales of 3,000 to 4,000, with gross margins of roughly 25%, leaving little room to absorb higher costs. Meanwhile, Minister of Finance Devendra Tanku has rejected claims that recent fiscal measures are solely responsible for the closure of bars and entertainment establishments, while operators in the sector continue to press the government to reconsider increased fees and taxes. Speaking with reporters this week, Tanku addressed public concern over reports of multiple closures, saying, "We're seeing a lot of bars get shut down and a lot of entertainment establishments," he said, before challenging media coverage of the issue. There's the same man who said, with the increase in the 70% increase in the price of natural gas, right, the reduction in the subsidies for manufacturing sector and so on, that he doesn't expect these businesses to pass on the costs to you, the consumer. No. They are so concerned. The government doesn't care about you, but the business sector will. So the government, who has been given the mandate to manage your money, yes, your money, they don't care. They're implementing policies to punish you. But he expects that the business sector, that is all about profit, that they will care about you and say, well, let us not increase the prices. We will absorb all of the price increases. Yes, we will suffer the reduction in our profits because that's what we are. We are decent citizens. We care. The government doesn't care, but we care. So we don't mind if we make losses. We don't mind if we suffer decreases and declines in our profits. That's all right. At the end of the day, we are being good citizens and we are ensuring that we don't put further pressure on the citizenry, because that's why we came into business, not to make profit. No. We don't spend our day trying to see how we can expand our businesses to make more profits. No, we spend our days trying to figure out how we can absorb any and all increases in costs. So aside from the increase in the price of natural gas, which is going to increase that cost, we also have to enjoy the increase in the cost of electricity for commercial enterprises. Don't forget that. So the manufacturing sector and others that depend on the natural gas for production. So we saw TCL has already announced that they are going to increase the price of cement, but other manufacturers as well. So we have that increase. We have the increase in the cost of electricity. We also have the increase for those manufacturing entities that are renting. They also now have to face an increase in rent because of the landlord surcharge. Then they're probably going to have to face an increase in bank charges because of the asset levy on banks and insurance companies. Those businesses that have a lot of vehicles, right, a fleet of vehicles that is insured, they are probably going to face increased insurance rates for their fleet of vehicles, again, because of the introduction of the asset levy on insurance companies. So those rates are probably going to go up as well. For those businesses that use LPG, remember the government reduced the subsidy on the LPG, the 100-pound cylinders. So in some cases, I saw recently where somebody was posting up a significant increase in the price of those cylinders. So those prices are going to go up as well. But thank you, the economic genius, telling you, don't worry, I don't expect these businesses to increase their costs, increase the prices of their offerings. I don't expect that will happen, and I'm calling on them not to. All right, just be good citizens and absorb any increases. You all can afford it. And if it is your landlord increases, well, remember you said, find somewhere else to rent. So, you have a warehouse, your landlord increase the rent, find another warehouse. I wonder if Mr. Tanku is going to make allocations for, well, probably not. So like as MPs, right? Those of us who rent office space, we are allocated $15,000 a month to rent office space. So if our landlord increases our rent, are we supposed to find somewhere else to rent? Move our constituency offices? Or is Mr. Tanku going to tell these landlords, you cannot increase your rent, but you will pay your surcharge? I just ask it. But the parliament pays the rent, so we'll see how that goes. So there was another interesting development that I saw in the newspapers this morning, which had me very concerned, and it's an issue that I raised with you all before, since October last year. And it seems it has now come home to roost. And I'm seeing there appears to be a protest outside of the Red House taking place as we speak. Quite a few people with signs and so on. So they couldn't wait. Population has come out. 9 months to date. 9 months. And already a big protest. Citizens went from overwhelming mandate to overwhelming regret. I'm waiting for them, the next sitting of Parliament. They are nonsense. Yeah, but citizens gave us an overwhelming mandate. Citizens gave us an overwhelming mandate. That's all they're singing. Overwhelming mandate on April 28th. Yeah? Call another election now. We'll see if you can sustain that mandate. Do it. That's why Pasabi said, no early local government election. Forget that. Sure getting licks. Where is this thing? Right. Did I save that? Let me see. All right. That's the one. Let me get this here. Right. So I think it was in this morning's right. Yeah, today's like what's that? Declining liquidity prompts Standard & Poor's warning on Trinidad and Tobago banks. Commercial banks ended this week with excess reserves of $3.8 billion, down from $5.3 billion a year earlier. All right? I told you all about this. in October last year. And I told you I had a conversation with a senior manager at the central bank. When during the budget, the Minister of Finance spoke about the 10% to public servants, and he indicated that once the negotiations were complete, that he would be speaking with Republic Bank and First Citizens and NIB with a view to finding the money to pay it. All right. Liquidity in Trinidad and Tobago's banking sector is weakening, a shift that could reduce the system's resilience in stress scenarios, prompting Standard & Poor's global ratings to revise the industry's risk trend to negative from stable. Trinidad and Tobago's banking industry's liquidity strength is eroding, which could reduce the industry's resilience in the face of hypothetical distress scenarios. The bulletin was titled Trinidad and Tobago's Banking Industry Risk Trends Turns Negative on Declining Liquidity Buffers. Standard & Poor's said TNT remains in banking industry country risk assessment, BICRA Group 6, a category that reflects elevated industry risk relative to global peers. Goes on to say, I won't get into the technicalities right now because that requires some lengthy explanations, and I'm looking at the time. All right, so I will come back to it, but I needed to touch on it today. Standard & Poor's attributed the weaker industry trend largely to unstable government savings. Let me repeat that. Standard & Poor's attributed the weaker industry trend largely to unstable government savings, which have led to increased volatility in bank deposits. The ratings agency stated that pressure stems from ongoing fiscal challenges and the country's heavy reliance on energy revenues, which remains highly volatile. As a result, Standard & Poor's said it may no longer view liquidity as a structural strength of the banking system unless recent trends reverse this year. Our revision of the industry risk trend to negative reflects persistent volatility in bank deposits as a result of unstable savings from the government amid continued challenges to boost fiscal revenues, mainly due to its highly volatile energy income. Consequently, we could regard the banking system's liquidity as credit neutral rather than a strength in our assessment, absent a reversal of recent trends during 2026. Now, they identified a timeline as to when the situation started, and it is between May and October of last year. Who came into office in May? TNT's banking industry's conservative funding structure and liquidity continue to compare well against more developed financial systems in Asia and Europe. And they make specific mention. We think Republic Bank and First Citizens Bank will continue benefiting from sound market positions in the domestic banking system, solid income diversification, and good earnings prospects. They will also continue to have sound capital, liquidity, and credit loss reserves, protecting their creditworthiness from hypothetical strains on asset quality. The banks have adequate funding and liquidity in line with the domestic banking system average. And what this assessment fails to take into account and consideration was that the banks have gotten to this position that they've just been praised for because of previous management. Remember, in the last couple of months, Mr. Tanku has moved expeditiously to change the board of directors of First Citizens Bank as well as Republic Bank. And they have indicated, government has indicated its intent, in particular with Republic Bank, the largest indigenous bank in the region, that has been declaring significant profits in excess of $2 billion for the past how many years, all right? That the government intends to exercise its influence with respect to its shareholding in the bank. As I told you all before, under the PNM for the last 10 years, the government did not interfere. Yes, they would have put the directors and so on, but largely the bank was allowed to direct its own costs, and they put people with experience, industry experience, persons who are captains of industry and who understand what it takes to run large corporations. All right? People who ain't seen yellow and red and so on. The PNM didn't mind putting, even though you might be supporting the UNC, they looked at your competency and the fact that you are a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, not that you're supporting UNC or whatever, right? And that's the difference between PNM and UNC. When it comes to these board appointments, the PNM come in and they realize, well, okay, we have people on this board who have the technical competencies and professional competencies that we require to manage this institution, leave them there, even if they support UNC, even if the UNC put them there. But when you have a government that is putting people like counselors, people like Vanessa Kusi, who was a housewife, who has no background whatsoever in running a major corporation, but her claim to fame is that her husband, unfortunately, was one of the divers who passed in that unfortunate Paria incident, right? She decided, I said, well, okay, well, you know, we could probably use her, play the sympathy card because people feeling sorry for her. She lost her husband in this most tragic incident. So we sent her up as a candidate in one of the newest districts that was created for local government, and she win. She get through. And then you come now and you all win the general election and you're putting boards in place. I said, I put Vanessa on that board now. Like put Anil on that board now. Put this one on that board now. High-end people who cleaners. I was told recently a cleaner from, I think, the hospital or something, they want to put him on the board of MTS. They just put in people just for so, not looking at your ability to be able to contribute to the run. This is not a parlor you're running here, no. These are state enterprises that either generate hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in profit or receive tens of millions of dollars in subvention from the state. So you need to make sure that the people you have sitting on these boards are competent. And they're not just sitting there to occupy a chair and collect a board fee at the end of the month. And because you need to make a quorum. So you put one or two persons who are competent and everybody else are just rubber stamps. Sit down there, conversations being had by the competent persons, and you have no idea what they're talking about. You can't even read a simple financial report, right? You can't read audited financials because you're flipping through pages and it's like, it's gibberish. But they just take you, yeah, counselor, come now. All the counselors are making much money anyway. You want a board position? Come. Why do you think there's so many boards that are still without, that are still unoccupied? Only recently they were able to put a board for TTMB. I have a question that was supposed to be posed to the Prime Minister last week Friday with respect to the Fair Trade Commission. No board in place. So they are not able to carry out their mandate to do the work that they're supposed to do because there is no board in place. Why? Because this government cannot find people who are competent, who support their party to be able to sit on these boards. And that is their problem. Because you're only looking for pro-UNC people and you are not seeing that PNM persons who are qualified professionals who could do the job and see them first as citizens rather than as supporters of the PNM. So now we can't put him because he's PNM, what UNC people will say. So these boards continue in abeyance. And it's just the executive management that running the company but cannot take certain decisions because the board is not in place. The board I was on, no big board, National Trust. We're responsible for issues related to conservation and so on of heritage sites, heritage buildings and so on. 9 months later, we resigned since the 29th of April, no board. Thank goodness that is a hybrid board, if you want to call it that. So you have elected members, elected by the membership, and then you had the appointed persons who were appointed by the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, right? So all of the appointed people resigned. Thank goodness we had the common sense in April last year to have our AGM, which we normally would have had in November. But we did what we need to do, got our audited financials in up to date and so on, and we had given the impending general election, we didn't know what the outcome would be. We had our AGM in April. So I don't know what's going to happen if no board is in place by April of this year with respect to that. But we had a number of projects that were ongoing, which I suppose probably just there because I was treasurer. I was one of the signatories on the accounts. Then you had the vice chairman was a signatory, the secretary, corporate secretary was a signatory as well. The chairman was a secretary. All of us resigned. They say resign. We waited, we didn't wait. So they found themselves in a bit of a pickle. Right? So S&P is saying, well, when we look at the performance of Republic Bank and we look at the performance of FCB previously, and we see a trend. But what they need to look at is the new management. Karen Dabesi has gone, and we know the circumstances under which Mr. Dabesi would have demitted office as CEO of First Citizens Bank. Now, I have full confidence in Jason Julian. I know the man, his competencies, his abilities. But does he enjoy the support of the government is another question. And with the government seemingly wanting to use First Citizens Bank and Republic Bank as their personal piggy bank, right? And their state funding, because remember we had heard, wasn't certified, but we had heard there was some issues. One of the issues they had with Ms. Darbesi was she refused to give certain loans to the government given certain uncertainties, right? Remember that? And she was asked to resign. Don't forget that. Mr. Hille, Central Bank, the battle between him and the Minister of Planning, who was the hatchet man, who was just going around. He was playing hatchet man for the government and demanding that people resign. So while this report expresses certain confidences in these two banks that are state-owned, it does not take into consideration, I don't know if S&P is aware of the change in management and what that presents. Because when we look at the constitution of the new Republic Board, who is the chairman of that board? All right? And I have told you, the staff at Republic Bank are concerned with what they are hearing, with the changes that they are seeing being made. In fact, there is a new president of Republic Bank, but he came through the ranks, as I understand, Mr. Sami, who has replaced Nigel Batiste as president and CEO of Republic Bank Financial Holdings Limited. But with the implementation of this new bank levy, asset levy, Republic Bank's asset base increased by some $7 billion in the last year. So based on my calculation with this new levy, this is a new charge at Republic Bank, a new tax that Republic Bank will have to pay in excess of $327 million based on their current asset base that they didn't have to pay before. So that when this article talks about the profits and the reserves and so on, that is going to be impacted. First Citizens Bank and Republic Bank are both subject to this asset levy, which is money that has to go to the government. And what is the government doing? A lot of that money is going to pay off debt. Some of these debts are debts that they incurred when they were in office between 2010 to 2015. What does tightness in liquidity do? It means that there is less money in the banking system to advance loans. And how do you treat with that? When demand is higher than supply, so you have people looking for loans, but the supply of money is limited, it is constricted. What happens? Interest rates go up. So who can afford is who will get. And who can't afford? Hard luck. Pressure. This is what your government is, and in those circumstances, your government thought that it made sense to implement this asset levy on banks at this time. And then talking about relying on Republic and First Citizens Bank to find the money, somehow or the other, to be able to treat with this 10% promise that they made. Back pay. Back pay. Remember they get their back pay for the same salaries that they didn't want. They get their back pay since June. All cash. No non-cash as they're talking about for PSA members. They didn't tell all non-cash to get your vote. Now they're telling you it's non-cash, and it might take up to 2 years for you to get that. But all you vote for that. So I am saying we need to be concerned about that, because it means that domestic borrowing is at risk. And if the government needs to borrow money and they cannot raise that money or get that money from the local banking system because you are now competing with the private sector, all right? So there's only so much money you could borrow. And if the government is borrowing large sums of money because their revenue position isn't good, has less money, we're talking about more credit restriction, more liquidity problems, right? People not saving enough. And with businesses closing, deposits, not enough deposits coming in. Banks depend on deposits to increase the money supply. And when UNC clapping like circus, says, yes, the bars closing down and the restaurants closing down, and yes, and failing to see that the monies that these entities make is critical for these banks. All right? And with people losing their jobs, tens of thousands, less money, no salaries coming in the bank, people not saving. They have no money to save. And those who have savings and are losing their jobs have to use up their savings now, what little they have, to survive until they could find a job. So you're impacting further on the country's liquidity problem. So all who have money sitting in fixed deposits and sitting in shares in the credit union and who have money on Abercrombie Fund and Paria Fund and all and mutual funds and all, who drawing down their money. You come in here, you get a ticket unexpected, or 2-3 tickets, they hit you 10,000. What happens? Your little kakada that you're saving, you have to run to the bank now to take it out to go and pay fines. And your government think that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Meanwhile, Dave patting himself on the back. Hey, we went and we raised a bond in the US, $1 billion, and it was oversubscribed 2.5 times. Successful. And what's the coupon rate? 6.5%. 6.5%. And he crowing and making this big song and dance, oversubscribed 2.5 times. You all know what that means? At 6.5%. That's the coupon rate for this bond. That over the 10-year period, for this $1 billion, you, Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer, will pay $650 million US in interest. All right? And he boasting about that. 6.5%. That should have been oversubscribed by about 8 to 10 times, not 2.5 times. Because it is very difficult to get interest rates like that. Anyway, unless you're dealing with highly volatile investment instruments like equities. But safe instruments like bonds, 6.5%, people should have been running down that. If we had US liquidity in Trinidad and Tobago, he would not even need to go on the US market for that. But Boston, what am I telling you? And I see in UNC supporters, only UNC could do that. PNM could never do something like that. Yes, and that, thank God, Kamala win election. Thank God UNC in power. Because Imbut could not do that. Imbut couldn't do that. Hold my bear. Article dated July 29, 2016. Government's US $1 billion bond oversubscribed. Government's US roadshow to float a US $1 billion bond has been oversubscribed by 3.5 times. Minister in the office of the Prime Minister, Stuart Young, said yesterday. Young, who spoke at the post-cabinet media conference, said Finance Minister Colm Imbert, who is in the US leading a TNT delegation on a roadshow to promote the bond, sent him a text message on the outcome of the issue. Imbert announced plans a few weeks ago to go to the US roadshow, pitching to several US financial institutions to raise a total of US $1 billion through the sale of 10 and 12-year international bonds, and this is to raise funds to finance development programs and for budgetary purposes. Hear this, sir? To raise funds to finance development programs and for budgetary purposes. Not to pay all their salaries, because when they came into office in 2015, September of 2015, 2016, and we didn't have money, and all the debt that Kamala Persad-Bissessar and they left the government in then, and they needed to ensure when Imbert went to Mr. Jawala, and Jawala tell him, it only have enough money to run the country for 3 days, and after that, I'm going to turn off the tap. You all remember that? And poor Imbert had to be going, knocking from pillar to post, door to door, going to the energy companies to beg with cap in hand, please, sir, you could give me an advance on your taxes because I need to pay salaries at the end of the month and we have no money. And the energy companies say, what tax are you talking about, Imbert? Well, is the end of the quarter, the taxes? You're like, why go from here? There are no taxes to be had. Didn't you get the memo? The UNC gave us very generous concessions, sir. You have no taxes to be had until 2024. You're real funny, you're a joker. You're joking? You didn't know that? Why? Look, let me call my partner and tell him this joke. You believe him, but just come here asking for money, asking us to give him an advance on the taxes so he could pay salaries and pay pension and public assistance and everything. You believe this man? And he didn't know he had no taxes to get? No royalties? Bye. That was the joke of the day. But remember that? Hence the reason in 2016, Mr. Imbert had to go on this roadshow to borrow, to raise this bond. to pay them things. Remember, he came in and he inherited Mr. Rambachan when I started off talking about what the UNC inherited, what from the PNM. Don't forget, Imbert inherited a $6 billion back pay debt. That's what he inherited. Kamla gave 14% increase, never paid the back pay. Imbert had to find the $6 billion to pay the back pay commitment that the UNC made, and the new salaries as well. The bond was due to be priced yesterday. It's priced. The amount of interest it will pay twice a year for 10 years is expected to be between 4.40% and 4.95%. It ended up at 4.5% and was oversubscribed 3.5 times at 4.5%. But Mr. Brightman, the best economist this country ever had, tax school, is singing and crowing. It was oversubscribed by 2.5 times at 6.5%, 2% higher than what Imbert was able to negotiate, and only 2.5 times Tanku. And Imbert was able to get it oversubscribed 3.5 times or 4.5% tax school. And you think that is something good? And at a period of time when we don't know if we're coming or going with respect to our energy sector, no dragon gas, we don't know what's happening with Manatee, we don't know what is happening with Coquina Mannequin, all right? And now we're reading where the Venezuelan vice president, well, president now, acting, Delcy, has announced that Venezuela is opening up to all these multinational companies. Come, we're ready to do business. Come, come, come. Venezuela's energy sector is open to all and sundry. So don't be surprised if somebody else get Dragon. Don't be surprised if somebody else get Manatee. Well, Manatee's ours, Loran, which we hoping to get. Don't be surprised. Because Delcy wants nothing to do with Kamla. Persona non grata. Don't forget that. The same National Assembly that declared her persona non grata is still there. They want nothing to do with us. OFAC license have about 2 months left on it. October, November, December, January. 2 months left. No conversations have been had with Venezuela. The situation is even worse now than it was before. All right, so that OFAC license about to expire, and Mr. Trump having been told, well, Venezuela is uninvestable at this point in time. Well, no talk about any OFAC license. So poor Monilal gone to India to try and see if he could get some investors for the refinery. But when the PNM went to India came to the PNM in the person of Mr. Naveen Jindal, the same UNC run him, you know. Oh, you're a criminal, you have charges, don't do no business with he. He's part of a corrupt cook-up with Rowley and Maduro, and they just want to use the refinery to refine Venezuelan crude. But now they're talking about the same Venezuelan crude. Same Venezuelan crude they're talking about, well, you know, there's that thing. When you had the Nigerian company, the African company, you came in and met them negotiating for the refinery. You run them, chase them. You say, now we want no business with Africa. We're going to India. So you're going to India to see if he can convince somebody in India. And then when he come back, he going to Guyana to see if he could get somebody in Guyana. Well, based on what the outcome of India is. And then they go into Suriname. So you had the African company there now, in the process of negotiating, ready to sign on the dotted line. I say, well, hold on now. We sorting things out. Hold on. Now we're here in India. What's going on with Wando? Well, I guess Wando gone. But they never hold a press conference to tell you, well, this is what is what. Did Wando pull out on their own, or did you dismiss them and tell them, well, we're not interested anymore? Thanks, but no thanks. Did that happen? We don't know. But they love to talk about transparency. This is a government that is built on transparency. This is 27-1G government. So we're going from Sturge quoting 27-1G to Alexander 27-1G. All right? That's where we are. From a financial standpoint. Gas continues to dip. Companies and Point Lisas. We don't know what's going on with Nutrien. If they're going to finally close up shop and leave, and who else? But this is the government that promised to fix everything. Well, we will fix it. We will fix it. We will fix it. What have they fixed since they came into office, other than their bank accounts? Nothing else. They fixed nothing else. Right? This is a government that has been beset with revenge. All they about is revenge. Get rid of Stuart Young pension, repeal the TTRA. Meanwhile, country continues to leak tax income, tax revenue. Right? Tanku said the problem is easy to fix. Just fix BIR, strengthen BIR, hire people. Now we're having problems hiring people. Okay. How are working out for you there, tax school? 9 months in. 9 months in. We're waiting on the first opportunity to ask you, how has your plan worked? Have you plugged the leaks with respect to tax leakage? You fix BIR? Well, you get rid of the TTRA, which was supposed to address that. So we wait to see. We wait to hear. You come and report and tell us. Up to now, when they came into office, there was a tax amnesty in place. Don't forget that was started under the PNM, which Mr. Taxku, after he beat up on Imbert, on that same tax amnesty, when Imbert came to the parliament to extend it, say all encouraging lawlessness, and all giving the tax breakers and the tax evaders, sorry, you all giving them a blind, supporting the criminal element. What did he do? As soon as he came into office, he extended. The amnesty was supposed to come to an end on the 2nd of May, the day after, well, the day just before he became Minister of Finance. And then he came and he extended it to the 2nd of August. To date, Mr. Taxku has not told the country how much revenue, how much outstanding tax revenue was generated from that amnesty. Is yet to tell us, so we can have an idea as to what the tax leakage is. Not one word. Well, I will file a question. Let me see if the speaker will approve it. So we could hear from Mr. Taxku. How much money? And what did you all do with that money? We want to know. All the things you all budgeted for. How many millions you all came for and asked for and approved in the media review for CPEP, and then shut down CPEP a month later? Not even a month later, at the end of the month. All these millions that you all came to the parliament for that was supposed to take CPEP to the end of the financial year, September 30th. What do you do with that money? All they come for how much millions for laptops, and yet still the laptops, all the laptops are yet to be delivered. They get 2,000 from India. Where do we have 2,000? But anyway, Trinidad and Tobago, we wait for bated breath. Meanwhile, let's see what happens with respect to this revitalization project. We saw people came from the high-powered team that came from the UAE last week. No press conference, no MOU signed. They came, they carried them around the country, carried them down in the back by Invaders Bay there, show them the ocean, show them the land, not a tent. Yeah, see? They put up 2 tents to say, all right, we're going to have a presentation, have some speeches and so on, kind of gauge what the team from the UAE feels. Nothing of the sort. They took them to Napan, a concert, they carried them somewhere to eat doubles. You know, they took them to the Queen's Park Savannah, the John Cupid village. They took them to Tobago and they did the jig with Chief Secretary Fali. Yeah, but nothing concrete. In the end, the minister come and say, well, as a result of this is what we get in, that's what we get in. No commitments, no nothing. We still don't know how much money was spent on this whole affair, because the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs says, well, we don't know what the cost will be yet. So we get them a week or two to decide, to finalize, and then we will ask the question, how much did it cost? It cost more than when Modi came here? I said that was $1 million. So they say. Your government working for you. Meanwhile, at TTT, we continue to see an exodus of persons, right, as they continue to pad the radio stations over there with their UNC propagandists and mouthpieces. And we see now they're trying to do the same thing with the television station. I understand a long-standing journalist was escorted out of the premises a couple of days ago by security. And there is a new logo, a proposed new logo going around where the colors are being changed from red to yellow and blue. We'll see if that is genuine or not. All right. But such is life in sweet Trinidad and Tobago. Never a dull moment in Sweet TNT. Well, you vote for that. Some of you all chose not to vote, so technically you vote for that. And then I missed this in the corner here, right? PSA rejects non-cash options for 10% arrears. Seems like Felicia grew up here. She grew up here. Well, all right. We see how that pans out. But I'm seeing where there's a post going around. Well, based on my research, it shows that she's a director on the board of NCRHA. And if that is so, and then the workers of the NCRHA who are protesting, Tim must go, Tim Gopi Singh, the chairman. You know, this man was boasting recently. They ended the contract with MTS, not MTS, Magic Mist, who had the contract to do cleaning and sanitization for the longest while. And last week, my office day on Thursday, one of the former employees came to see me. So they've been furloughed for 3 months, right? Because Magic Mist would have lost the contract. And so she's looking for work because she has a family to support. She's a single parent. And she came with a letter which says that for the 3 months that you are furloughed, you are an employee of MTS, of Magic Mist, sorry, but you're not getting any pay. She's been working there for 3 years and she doesn't know what to do. So she's hoping we could help her to find a job in the meantime. But the fact that it says she's an employee and she could get called out, and on the 1st of April, they will have a meeting, a general meeting, to update them on what is the latest. So I don't know if it is the Magic Mist is hoping to get another contract somewhere and to hire back these people, so they want to make sure if and when they get a contract, they actually have staff to take up the contract. So you are restricting these people and telling them, well, you remain a staff member for the 3 months, but you're not getting paid, no benefits to be had. So what are they supposed to do? Just sit down and wait? How are they feeding their families and paying bills in the meantime? But Tim happy about that. We were able to cut costs. And we cut in costs. And the last administration contracts and how much money was spent and millions was paid out and so on. You driving your Mercedes, right? Your pocket nice. And at the end of every month, you're collecting a board fee as chairman, which is more than, which could have probably paid the salaries of at least 2 or 3 of these workers for the month. You getting that. They don't know where the next meal coming from, where the next dollar coming from to pay their bills. But you boasting, oh, you cut saving, you cut here and you cut here, and that's what they're about. They never cared about the people. Never cared. But they say we don't care. Yeah, we in the PNM, we don't care. We were the oppressors. Who are the oppressors now? Folks, it is 5 o'clock. I stayed well over the time that I had planned to stay. Oh Lord, let me see here. Let's see what's going on in the chat. And the trolls have come out. Let's see what is this here. Let's see, Caribbean Soul asking, Dominic here still check woman clothes online. Only your Prime Minister's outfits. Yeah? Caribbean Soul. No, the same way you all used to check Rowley clothes, Rowley suits, Rowley watch, Rowley shoes, Stuart Young watch. You know, like that? Yeah. I just only check you to see, you know, your Prime Minister. All right? Your loving, caring Prime Minister who could afford to spend thousands of dollars on outfits, and it's her money, she could do it as she pleases, right? But meanwhile, the citizens who can't afford to do that, who not even getting minimum wage, and who looking for Caribbean Soul, you have any work? You have any vacancies? I don't know what you do, who you are, what you do for a living, but if you know anybody who's hiring, come in the chat and talk that now. Send me a contact number for somebody I could call who is looking for workers, so that when people come to see me every week, I could tell them, guess what? We have somebody who's looking for workers and we get a job for you. Yes. And we could call and say, hey, we have a resume to send for you. Or they could give us their email address. And we could send the information and get work. That's what you should be coming here to tell me about. Not talk nonsense about if I still checking women's clothes online at the cost of women's clothes. Just your prime minister. I'm not interested in anybody else's. All right. You could spend thousands also with your MP salary, but you're looking like a cheap man. All right. I guess you don't. So you watching man. That's what you do. You like to watch man. Well, forget about me. I don't swing that way. So if you're looking for one, no, wrong one, sir. Okay? You might want to look in the direction of the government bench to have at least 2 persons there who might be interested in what you're offering. I am not. Okay? Just letting you know. Jenny says, blessed afternoon, MP Romain and all Upton. Yes, she's one of the directors on the board of the NCRHE. Is that not a conflict of interest? How can she stand up for her members when she's sitting on the very board that is making the decisions that is inimical to their well-being? That could only happen under UNC government. They thought that makes sense to put her there. And she thought it made sense to accept. So she ain't making enough money as PSA president. All the perks of PSA president is not enough. You need to be a director on a board to collect a board fee too. Come now, man, foolish. How much money all you want? Is greedy all greedy? So you don't have enough work to do in the PSA that you need to sit on a board too? Man. Ay. What's wrong with all this? After the beach, you're wicked. After the beach, say for me as a grinder. Oh, Lord. Rukbit says, tell him check Barry. Oh, my goodness. Mikhail says, this government continues to fly out on government business and no communication. Exactly. Right? There's a complaint about how Stuart Chung and Dr. Rowley traveling, but at least when these guys came back, they would have a press conference at the airport to tell you, we went, this is what we did, this is what we achieved. Julene went China. We don't know what she went China for, what she achieved. Saddam Hussein and Sean Silvers, again, and Julene went to the UAE, who went to Bahrain, who went to Oman. We don't know what they achieved, what were the outcomes, no press conference, nothing to update you all. But money spent. Yes. Thousands of dollars. Sure, they didn't travel economy, business class. First class, probably flew Emirates. Yeah? And the pod. It's not an ordinary seat, a whole pod. Mr. Munilal is in India with his entourage. Right? Again, your taxpayers' money spent. All we keep hearing is, hopefully, if things pan out, and if, only ifs, no guarantees. If this happens, well, then this will happen. And if. He was the same one who was championing the cause, talking about Stuart Chung went Venezuela, which is right there 13 times, and how much money it cost taxpayers and what he went for. We know what he went for. What did he do? We know what he did. He is not persona non grata. He can have a conversation with Delcy. Madam persona non grata cannot. All right? Just reminding you all of that. She can't. And she is prime minister. He is not prime minister. And he could still have a conversation with Delcy. Just mentioning. But that is where we are. Elections have consequences. So too election promises have consequences. And I see across in Tobago, some of the loudest mouthpieces who used to talk for the TPP and defending Fali and Rowley this and the PNM that. Not even a good 2 weeks. And they start. Same thing that happened in Trinidad with UNC supporters who are expressing regret. Some of the more prominent mouthpieces for the TPP have come out. I saw yesterday Eva McCall, she's one. Love to do lies and tell Rowley where to get off and so on. She complaining her church, some property with the thing and wherever, and she went to Fali and she talked to the chief and the chief tell her you with a thing and this and that and nothing and the chief and and she holding back anymore and she hear who put out hit on her and who threatening to take her life or some nonsense. So, and she want them to know a thing like this. All that 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And already they realize Fali the great, Fali was the best thing ever since sliced bread. And already 2 weeks, boy. I would have played for you all, but I don't have time. Next time. Pamela is saying, I thought the country had no money. Those trips free. No, they're not. Yeah, so it's only a matter of time. Certain people who they were expecting to get secretary position and assemblyman position and councillor position and whatnot didn't get it. So people vex in Tobago. Okay. Never a dull moment. Folks, Jenny says, Jenny, I will send you a video for you. I listened to it yesterday. Poor Ava. Poor thing. And this next one, Bernie Jack Greg. All who thought the chief would have get them this and get the children that, and they ain't getting nothing. 2 weeks. All they boasting Blue Wave, and the PNM. All they didn't want the PNM. All they wanted for Ali. And who displaced and who this and who that. Really? Okay. Arthur Lucian James is saying Blue Wave damage. Yeah, the vessel that replaced the Cabo Star. It ain't even gone into service yet. Gone to Tobago. Damaged. I had to fix it. But I thought Blue supposed to wash out Blight. Like them in Trinidad and Tobago Blight. I tell you. And I see clown number 2 has arrived in Parliament. You is dumb, you is fool. Dave Arjun. Dave, you can't even construct a proper sentence, right? And want to call me a fool? It seems like you need to join Alexander and join Alta, Dave. All right? When you could construct a proper sentence, come back and talk to me. Well, we have a West Indian reader for you and a couple of you all in the UNC. Right? You all need to start at the basic. A for apple, B for bat. Dan is the man in the van. You all need to start there, at that level. Some of you UNC supporters. Yeah. Not Boyo and Kala. You all ain't reach Boyo and Kala level yet. You all have to go to the basics. Yeah. A for apple, B for bat, C for cat, D for dog, E for egg, F for fish. That's what we had to take you on. My 4-year-old nephew, 3.5-year-old nephew could do better than you, Dave. He talking perfect, constructing perfect sentences, and you come in here with that? Look. Oh my goodness. I have a book for you. They gave us a book. They gave us some books in Parliament on Friday to give out to kindergartners in our constituency. Send me your address, Dave. Let me send one for you. Right? I'll send one for you. Because clearly you need it. Let me see here. If PNM give crumbs, the UNC take their job. So true. Let me see here. Dexter James saying the UNC teaches them absolutely nothing. That's why every time they speak, they embarrass themselves, and strange enough, they are proud. They are the UNC and proud. UNC and proud. Proud of what? Come back again. You shameless, only pedophile in the PNM. Okay. But you'll have a Minister of Government, Dave, who is under US investigation for human trafficking and prostitution. You'll have a councillor, Dave, who seems to be a lackey for the Minister of Public Utilities. He's always sniffing around the Parliament. Okay? He's a councillor, Dave. Right? I think he's the man now running Kick Out the PNM since Alan Karim died. Did you see, Dave, the photos that were published on UNC Cabal of the mother who screenshot this UNC councillor who called her son video call while naked, Dave, and telling the boy, 15-year-old schoolboy, all the things he wants to do to him? Dave? Yeah? You know about that, Dave? And all the text messages that he sent to the boy, 15 years old, schoolboy. A man sending these things, you calling a 15-year-old boy video call while you're naked lying on a bed. I'm telling him you're ready for him and all the things you want to do. You all don't know about that. What you call that, Dave? We call that. All your sickos. but talking about pedophiles in the PNM. Really, Dave? I'm sure there is no pictures of any PNM minister or any PNM member, PNM MP, naked, sending any naked photos to any 15-year-old boy or any messages of that nature to any 15-year-old schoolboy trying to groom him, Dave. Are you in shame to talk about these things? The report that you all commissioned in 1997, right? The SAPGA report. All it did with that, sit down on your hands for 4 years, from 97 to 2001. You remember that report, Dave? Go and look it up and take a read now, Dave, before you come in here with your foolishness. Or pedophiles in the PNM and pedophiles in the PNM. Look, all you're good with. Oh my goodness. You're good, yes? Something wrong with Tole. Julie noted Charles Coppin. That has really rubbed me the wrong way, you know, but sometimes I had to remind them. Because like they forget. And there's footage out there. But anyway. So Judith Jones is saying we have to block the haters. Africans are not for sale. They must respect the red, white, and black, not orange, white, and green. So true. But when it is that they have their prime minister blowing the racial dog whistle and trying to pretend, but there's nothing new. Remember when she told Camille, you have the name of your slave, of a slave master? And Dave have a slave master name. I'm talking to Dave, show forward. You will go from here. Go from here. See. So folks, we will chat again soon. All right. You see, as soon as the trolls reach, it's time for me to take my leave. They have nothing of substance to offer. Why don't you go on the UNC page? Go and kick out the PNM page and comment. Go on the UNC. They had no press conference this morning. No government ministers wanted to have a press conference this morning, so you all could comment. You all stop Monday night forum meetings. No need to push propaganda anymore because you're all in government. Right? So your prime minister doesn't need to inform you all of anything anymore. Now she just communicating with you all via X and WhatsApp and press releases. No more Monday night forum. Come and talk about 200,000 people lost their work and 300,000 people were fired under the PNM. And then you come in parliament and say it was only 64,200. Tanku say it was 70,500. And in less than 9 months, you have Padarat come and say it was actually 64,200. Which figure is it, Dave? The 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 you all told us lost their jobs after Petrotrin the refinery was shut down, and all you sang that song from 2018 to 2025, and then have to come and now put it on black and white and come in the parliament of all places to say it was only 64,200. And if another opportunity presents itself, you all might come now and tell us it was only 55,000. Every time, the figure keeps going down and down, showing how the leadership of your party were a bunch of liars. And you all were regurgitating and repeating those lies. Come here and talk about that. Tell us. 64,200. Padarat said that it is on Hansard in 10 years. That works out to what? 6,400 people a year? 6,400 people in 1 year. Over 10 years. And in the space of 9 months, less than 1 year, Dave, less than 1 year, Caribbean Soul, your government has fired more people in 9 months than the PNM fired in 10 years. And I am quoting Padarat's figures, not my figures. I didn't make that up. Padarat came in the parliament and said it. You don't believe me? Go back and replay and hear for yourself. In 9 months, they fired more people than the PNM fired in 10 years. But you all wouldn't come and talk about that. You want to talk stupidness about pedophile in the PNM. Something wrong with Tole. Wrong with Tole. The shame. In 9 months, protests outside the parliament. How many protests did the PNM endure in 10 years? And you all said the PNM were wicked and oppressive. Rowley was a dictator. But I'm certain there was no protest outside the Red House in 9 months of them coming into office. Pretty sure of that. And there was a protest today And there's going to be another one tomorrow in front of the Red House again, where more people are expected to come out. But this is the government that cares. This is the government that everybody was supposed to win under. Winners don't protest in 9 months. Winners do not come out and protest in front of the Red House with placards after 9 months of a government that promised them they would win. That's not what winners do, Dave. So what does that tell you? Caribbean Soul. Are you all winning? Either of the two of you win anything yet? What did you all win? You get a $1 reduction in the price of super gasoline, and your Prime Minister has taken it back in the form of landlord surcharge, bank asset levy, increase in passport fees, increase in licensing fees, increase in traffic fines. They remove VAT over 7,000 food items. The price of food went down? Has your cost of living gone down? Did the food import bill go down as a result of that in 9 months? That's what they promised. Has it gone down? I keep hearing people saying everything going up, despite the fact that VAT was removed and 7,000 food items that were supposed to solve the problem. And Dave, come now, man. What else? What has gone down? Who has won? Who won? For all you know, probably one or the both of you are probably working CPEP, URP. You're too ashamed to admit. Government take away your jobs and all, you're still praising them. And you're calling PNM people dotish. Lord. Anyway. Very much so. All you buy that wholesale. Wholesale, you know. But up to now, they still can't prove 2.6 billion was stolen. Where the Auditor General? She get pip. No evidence after 9 months? I thought at least by now, they would have found something. Again, no evidence that AV drilling and the fake oil. Not one document. After Munilal prosecuted that for over 2 years, he is the Minister of Energy and he hasn't been able to call on Petrotrin, Paria, Heritage, anybody, bring the documents to show that AV drilling did not deliver the oil. Nothing. They finally paid the families of the divers, some of the divers, families, the same 1 million that they said wasn't enough, that they told the people don't take, and made them wait 9 months to finally receive the same million they could have gotten 9 months ago and improve their lives. But them don't take it. That's just propaganda. They're trying to bribe all and whatnot and think 1 million, you could get 5. They didn't take it. You come 9 months later to give them the same million and beating your chest. And they still intend to sue. So let's add them to the list of the 117 persons who were detained for the last 6 months and against whom no charges were laid and who are now licking their chops because they see they could make a money off of the state for wrongful detention. And I wouldn't even be surprised if Anand Logan is one of the attorneys who takes up those cases, because he don't discriminate when it comes to money, right? It's the state. And what if he plans to drop the lawsuit? You know the lawsuit with John Paul Coolman murder accused? Remember he's suing the state $3 million a piece. Or a little more, $3.5 million a piece. And they beat up the PNM on that, you know, because, right, let me see if the UNC, if Mr. AG is going to come and say, well, we've decided to, we're not going to challenge and we're going to pay. You'll pay the $3.5 million. I hope all of you UNC supporters will come out and protest that, because the PNM was fighting hard to ensure that that figure was significantly reduced. Right? Don't forget, the same wicked PNM was trying to make sure that figure was reduced from 3.5 million each. And one of the main things they were suing for was the prison conditions that they had to endure while they were incarcerated, which they endured. Most of the time that they spent in prison was under the People's Partnership. When Anand Ramlogan said, what? Jail make the right fig. The prison conditions, nothing wrong with it. And then he now, who was Attorney General then, and who said the prison conditions is perfectly fine, jail make the right fig. He now coming to sue to tell the court, well, the prison conditions back then, when he was Attorney General, that it was inhumane and that these men deserve $3.5 million each. But since Mr. AG just dropping cases left, right, and center, not pursuing civil matters anymore, and not arguing these cases and just capitulating, let us see if he will capitulate on this matter and if he will pay each of these persons $3.5 million. And remember, the attorney had to get a percentage, right? So if they get 3.5, he had to get a piece of every one of those 3.5. So he's not even in the government and still eating our food. Yes, he needs to. For the past 9 years, we heard about Kamala Health. She can't walk and she still cut all her tail. Really? She could cut anybody's tail? Well, she got her first cut tail last week in the Senate. No, Zoso. Goso, which is also her first cut tail. And I saw what she said last week or so, there will be no early local election. But since she's so sure she could cut tail, call it. Call it. Tell her, call it, Dave. Put her money where her mouth is. Call it and see if she will win. PF Cortez is asking what happened. Well, that was the question I was asking earlier on. What happened to Jayanti Lakshmi? She vanished like dust in the wind. Poor soul. They used and abused her and cast her aside. Caribbean Soul saying PNM was always about protecting criminals. Really? Which criminals? Call names now. I could call names of criminals that the UNC protected. I'm still trying to protect. Two of them who should have gone to the US for trial, Ishgal Baransing and Steve Ferguson. Where are they? Well, Ish has gone to the great beyond. Right? He has escaped justice, but Steve is still there. Kamala said they did no wrong. David Lee, you'll insist he must not resign. He's before the court on $1 million bid for fraud. You have Mr. Munilal, who is the subject of the civil suit and a police investigation with respect to the EMPD matter. You have Ratiram, who was accused by two of his former colleagues in the person of Vasant Bharat and Devant Maharaj, who swore to an affidavit that they were approached by this goodly gentleman who offered them prostitutes. Propositioned them, offered prostitutes and gave them call cards. Brought prostitutes to a UNC event and was parading them around and offering them to some of the men in the thing. That's a crime, eh? Human trafficking and prostitution is a crime. But today he's sitting in the cabinet as a minister. Caribbean Soul. What you call that? That's not protecting. I just asking a question. You know. Just saying. Celestine Allen is saying you all have been warning the citizens, they didn't listen, and now look at the mess we're in and the whole country is stink. Yes, it is. Terrible. When Mrs. Prasad Bissessa staunchly defended Ram Logan and Ramdeen, right? Ramdeen, who is still the subject of a police investigation with respect to Prison Gate, he stands accused of copying and pasting witness statements to defraud the state of millions of dollars. And yet still he's sitting as the chairman of the National Gas Company, Caribbean Soul. What you call that? You have a master of the court and the DPP said he is of the unflinching view that a crime took place here. This is without an investigation, just a cursory glance of the documents, the witness statements that were cut and pasted. The DPP, the current DPP said that. And this man is sitting as the chairman of NGC? Really? And you want to talk about PNM protecting criminals? Call names. At least when Marlene McDonald got herself in her problems, Dr. Rowley fired her forthwith. Look at what he fired her for. Because because Berkey came to her swearing in. Something as simple as that. A man who had no charges against him, but there were just allegations that he was involved in wrongdoing. And Dr. Rowley fired her a couple days after she was sworn in or the day after for this man being present. You see these simple things? But you have a man sitting in the cabinet who is on $1 million bail for fraud, trying to defraud you, the taxpayer, of millions of dollars, and he is not fired. He's still sitting as a government minister, still presiding. And in his ministry, you have two others. One who was accused of engaging in wrongdoing with respect to Cans of Hope and the Jericho Project, who is accused of being a fraudster himself, and another one who stands accused of hiring somebody to kill a DJ, and who stands accused of major theft, right, with respect to live sport funds. 3 of them in one ministry. And you want to talk about PNM protecting criminals? You real bravies. Something wrong with Tole. You need a checkup from the neck up. Folks, we will chat again soon. If I stay on and go to entertain these guys, I'll probably be here and I will miss. All right. And I did give a commitment to my band. PF Cutter says now Ratiram had news reporting showing he's going to open a next agro processing plant. What happened to the one that is currently available in Moruga serving some manufacturers? Yes. Caroline is saying Kamla only mining a set of criminal in Shipati, taking the taxpayers' money and protecting them. And people like Caribbean Soul and Deva June would never speak on that issue. But they went over Foster Cummins and how much contract Foster get. That is why Khadija got put in her place Friday when she raised that issue during Kareem's contribution, and she asking about was the crime with respect to Foster getting contracts, and he said, well, I don't know about that, but you know what is a crime? Being kidnapped and not reporting it, and that was it. He shut her down for the rest of the debate. You see, she's just smiling like a Cheshire cat. Shame. All of you, man, tell all bright. If you all think you'll have it easy with us for the next 4.5 years, well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait and see. Now be no waxing warm. Caribbean Soul says Dominic can't cook. I'm a bachelor, sir. All right? You know what that says? I can cook. I've been cooking since I was 10 years old. Because one thing my mother made sure is that her sons could cook. We could iron, we could wash, we could clean, we could do everything so that no woman could cut style on any of her sons. That's what she used to always say, right? And my mother was a damn good cook, and she taught me well. Okay? Perhaps next time I will cook in advance and I'll bring it and show you my culinary skills. So, folks, have a good one. Let me go and support my band, eh? Right? All right? Go on, those of you who are so inclined, let's take in some panorama. Let's enjoy the culture. It was a UNC minister who told us of Curep interchange corruption. Yes, Stacey Rupnarayan, who wrote to Kamla, complaining about the concerns the board had about the line minister Rambachan, and what happened? Stacey was fired. We chat again soon, folks. Have a good one.